Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 305 Duplessis versus Adesanya, which takes place this Saturday in Perth, Western Australia. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as usual, is Keith Shillan, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well. We, at this juncture that we're recording this right now on Sunday night, we're less than 24 hours removed from recapping one of the most forgettable UFC Fight Night cards ever, maybe the most forgettable one of the entire Apex era. I'm glad that the UFC wasted no time in getting us a card to wash the taste of UFC Vegas 95 out of our mouths, because if you ask me, UFC 305 is pretty dynamite. Tell me if you disagree, but I love it for what it has as well as what it doesn't have. We got 12 fights on Saturday, knock on wood. Of the 12 fights, 10 of them have an Oceanic fighter in them, Australian, New Zealander, Tasmanian. Only one of them has two Australians against each other. So just plenty of sensible service to the hometown crowd there in Perth. But then good fights up and down the card. I think the main card is super solid. I think the undercard has some prospects kind of looking to regain their momentum, and at least one prospect that I personally am pretty high on. Good stuff. And then what I kind of alluded to on our recap last night, I love it for what it doesn't have, because this is exactly the kind of card that most times it seems the UFC would have stuck two more just lousy or meaningless fights onto, and all of a sudden it's subtraction by addition. This is a pretty fat-free card. Tell me how you feel about it.
Yeah. I give it like a B. Like it's really good. I mean, the main event's fantastic. There's a backstory. The thing I'm most excited about the main event is it answers a lot of questions. Answers a lot of questions about Duplessis. Answers a lot of questions about Adesanya. But also it answers, the ultimate question that we've been asking for years now. Like, who is going to be the guy that's holding the title when Bo Nickal takes it from him? And the guy who wins this matchup is probably the most likely guy.
Yeah, that's the most important part. I think Bo Nickal's, he casts his shadow over the entire card. There are a couple heavyweight fights on this card. Those guys are not safe from him. Once he cleans out 185 and 205, he's coming for you guys. So yeah, I mean, they couldn't call this UFC 305. Duplessis and Adesanya are, keeping Bo Nickal's spot warm, but we all know that's what this card really is.
Yeah, exactly. So, the rest of the card, it's good. There's ranked fighters. I just feel like the reason I didn't give it an A is I feel like it's missing one fight. If you gave me one, really dazzling co-main event that I'd be excited about, you give me another top five, two top five guys fighting where the winner gets a title shot, something like that. Then I think I'd give this card an A.
And you know who to blame for that? Person to blame is Steve Erceg, because if he had done things just a little differently a couple months ago, the co-main event of this card would be Erceg versus Pantoja 2 for the flyweight title.
Yeah, that's
like the guy came temptingly close to winning a UFC belt earlier this year, and his fight against Kai Kara France has some title implications, especially for him. Maybe less so for Kara France, who's lost a few recently. But yeah, short of having another title fight on this card or another just absolute blockbuster fight, I think it is pretty solid.
Yeah, no, I'm happy. Especially what we're getting. But yeah, for pay-per-view, I'd say, yeah, give me a B.
Any other general thoughts on this one before we dive into the prelims?
Yeah, one thing I always say, when I grade, I get more excited as we break it down, and the more we get the little things, the countdown show, the embeddeds, the press conference, the ceremonial weigh-ins, all this stuff. That builds my excitement. So by the end of this week, I might be calling this an A. But right now, it's very, very good pay-per-view.
And if you are familiar with our show, you know that Keith is going to be more excited about this card even when we get done talking about it 2.5 hours from now. I'm pretty good at getting Keith amped for these cards.
yeah, we break down the main event. I have a hard time going to sleep sometimes.
Yeah,
right afterwards.
And this is one of those where, yeah, plenty to talk about when the main event comes, but plenty to talk about before then. You ready for these prelims?
Yep.
First up on the UFC 305 undercard is a men's flyweight matchup between the debuting Stewart Nicoll and Jesus Santos Aguilar. Nicoll, the 29-year-old Australian, is 8-0 overall. As I said, this will be his debut in the UFC. He most recently fought back in March at Beatdown Promotions, where he got a first-round knockout. He knew almost 2 months ago that he was going to be debuting here. This was a planned debut, no kind of late notice thing. And he's going to be facing Aguilar. 28-year-old Mexican is 10-2 overall. He's 2-1 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He dropped his debut to Tatsuro Taira last February. Since then, he has back-to-back wins over Shannon Ross and Mateus Mendonça. The most recent of those, the Mendonça fight, was in February of this year. So he's been on the shelf for about 6 months. Odds here do favor the newcomer. Nicoll is minus 225, Aguilar plus 180. Something that maybe I should have mentioned during the intro, but we can mention it as we go. I said that the UFC did some very sensible booking in terms of getting Australian, New Zealander fighters on this card. For the most part, the UFC also did a good job at getting the hometown favorites in winnable fights. In a couple of cases, to an embarrassing extent. I'm going to quiz you on some lines a little later that are going to make you like shit out your eye holes. But but here, I think this is sensible because I like Nicoll a lot as a prospect, but he's very green. He's very green at MMA. He is a longtime BJJ competitor, and he is one that once he turned to MMA seems to have picked up the striking elements of it pretty quickly. But he's an 8-fight veteran. I think Aguilar, as someone who's proven that he belongs in the UFC, but is definitely on that lower rung, he's the perfect. I think he's the perfect first test. The first thing I picked up about Nicoll when I started watching his fights, all the way back from his earliest MMA fights up to his more recent ones, for a guy that came to MMA as an already decorated grappler, this dude knows how to wrestle. He's a pretty good wrestler. It helps that he's a good athlete. He's kind of a compactly built, muscular flyweight. He's got a bit of the Kai Car Fance frame to him, where he's not the tallest flyweight, but he's a guy that you can tell he definitely walks around well over 125. But pretty good entries just because he is a fast, powerful guy. Pretty good at finishing. Again, I don't think he has all the tools in terms of being like great at running the pipe, turning a double into a single, that kind of thing. But at least against the level of competition he's been fighting so far, has been able to kind of overwhelm them just with physicality. I like his striking. It's still a work in progress, but he seems to be turning his opponent's concern over the takedown into openings on the feet. He's definitely developing some ground and pound. You look at his record, he actually has more knockouts, TKOs than submissions on his record, but some of those TKOs are on the ground, and they were kind of choose your poison type finishes where the opponent could just stay there and get clobbered or turn their back and get choked. Based on the limited amount of tape there is on him, and again, he is an 8-fight veteran with a lot of first-round finishes, I am mildly high on this guy as a newcomer to the UFC flyweight division, and he's going against someone in Aguilar that is probably not better than him anywhere. Aguilar's 2-1 in the UFC, but he's 2-1 in the UFC with 2 wins over guys that have 0 UFC wins between them. All we know about him is that he's worse than Tatsuro Taira and he's better than Shannon Ross, and that basically covers all but about 5 flyweights in the UFC right now. But Aguilar, he's going to be smaller than Nicoll, while he is a very savvy and tricky grappler. Ironically, considering that Nicoll is the medal winner, he's more of a BJJ guy where he gets stuck on the bottom doing BJJ stuff. A lot of his finishes are dependent on him lulling his opponents into a mistake. I just think Nicoll's going to clobber this guy. Give me Stewart Nicoll. I'm going to say it's a first-round TKO on the ground, where he probably hurts Aguilar pretty good on the feet. either Aguilar shoots a bad takedown, Nicoll just spins behind and pounds him out on the ground, or he just clocks him on the feet and finishes on the ground. But give me Nicoll big time here, and the Perth crowd will be popping right from the get-go.
Yeah, so I think we got to go back to yesterday's card where I was all messed up with Sergey Spivak getting on bars, and I always have to make a Bo Nickal reference. I've been doing it for, I don't know, a long time now after I was challenged by a listener. How the hell did I not use the Bo Nickal reference now when the guy's name is Nickal? Oh, what the hell's the matter with me? Holy moly. I think I lost the step. I think I passed my prime, man. I might have to hang, you know what I mean? I'm about to Tony Ferguson this thing.
I mean, guys, I think Keith may be a shot analyst. Just the question is whether it's all going to fall off at the same time, or, you know.
That's right. So we got Jesus Aguilar and Stewart Nicoll to start it off. So I'm going to start with this with Aguilar. You mentioned, well, first of all, you said that he beat Shannon Ross, and then maybe, you said he's somewhere between Tyra and Ross. And in my mind, you said that leaves everyone but 5. This is how bad my mind was. I didn't go, oh, there's 5 people better than Tyra. I thought you meant there was 5 people that Ross is better than in the UFC. And I'm
no.
I'll be like, Ben, name 5 people in the UFC. Shannon Ross is better. I'm gonna put you on the spot right there. Then I realized you were going the other way.
Yeah.
That's so. He said he's beaten guys that don't have any wins in the UFC. Well, if he wins again, that would still remain true.
Yeah.
If he beats Stewart Nicoll. I will say this. I thought he lost to Mateus Mendonca. I scored it for Mendonca. I mean, it was a close fight, split decision. It is what it is. Jesus Aguilar, he's a short, stocky guy. Good output on the feet. He's a pressure striker, constantly moving forward. He wants to get in the pocket and throw down. He wants to brawl in the pocket. He's so aggressive. I've seen him almost knock himself over trying to land shots. He throws a lot of power shots. I mean, he showed power against Shannon Ross, starch him in the first round. Good calf kicks. He doesn't care about defense. He's very hittable. That's, what's probably going to hold him back moving forward. He's a pretty solid offensive wrestler. He's got some fast entries, though he'll shoot from distance without a setup. He will look for throws, but a lot of times he doesn't have, he was going with throws, didn't have the good posture, and he ended up on the bottom himself. Not the best top control. If he gets on top, he's active. He's got some good ground and pound. But he doesn't really control. I like his guillotine. He's got a strong guillotine. He's a bit of a specialist, but he's got 4 subs by guillotine, including one on the Contender Series. But he's a weak defensive wrestler. He struggles to get off the bottom. You mentioned Nicoll only having 8 fights, 7 of them by stoppages. So I mean, this guy's a finisher. Again, this is a step up in competition, so take that what it's worth. But like I said, on the feet, man, I think I agree with I like his striking. He's a pretty good boxer. Tight inside strikes. He has 4 TKOs. I know a lot of them are on the ground, but he's showing some power. He has some hard leg kicks. The thing is, his striking is just to set up his takedowns. He's got pretty good entries, though he will shoot too far away. But what I like is, even if he's too far away, he's relentless to get the fight to the ground. He's going to keep pressing it until he gets it down. He also can get inside, get some body lock takedowns. He'll get inside, he'll battle with some knees and stuff, kind of wear his opponent down, then drop back down. When he gets down, I mean, the guy's a good top control guy, wraps up the legs, good ground and pound. He has 3 subs on his record. So you definitely see that BJJ background. I'll say this about Aguilar, and Nicoll. Both guys are fun. I love Aguilar's offense, but his lack of defense is a big issue. I'm going to go with the newcomer too. I think Nicoll takes him down. I think he eventually locks into submission. Give me Nicoll by 2nd round submission.
Next up on the UFC 305 prelims is a welterweight matchup between Song Kenan and Ricky Glenn. Song, the 34-year-old from China, is 21-8 overall. He's 5-4 in the UFC. He's coming into this bout off of a loss. He competed most recently last December at UFC Fight Night. Song Yadong versus Gutierrez, where he dropped a unanimous decision to Kevin Jusset. So he'll be looking to get back on track here. So will his opponent, Glenn, who will be moving up from lightweight to welterweight in an attempt to right the ship. Glenn, 35-year-old American, is 22-8-2 overall. He's 4-5-1 in the UFC. He is coming in here on a 3-fight winless streak, defined by his majority draw against Grant Dawson, which at this point is almost 3 years ago, and then back-to-back first-round knockout losses to Christos Giagos and Drew Dober. Odds here, unsurprisingly, favor Song. He is -200. Glenn is +170. Keith, first of all, I mentioned that 10 of the 12 fights on this card have at least one Australian or New Zealander fighter in them. The two that do not both have Chinese welterweights, so maybe there's some master plan the UFC has back on Dana White's whiteboard. I don't know what it is.
Short travel, I think.
Yeah. Short travel. I would say it's something about serving the television audience in China, except this card's going on at like basically normal time for North American fans. So I don't pretend to know what the master plan is here, nor do I know what
even Chinese fans are fans of Song Kenan.
Well, I'm going to flip this one to you, but Ricky Glenn, I was surprised to see him move up to 170. He is fleeing some heavy hitters. I mean, you get knocked out in back-to-back fights by Christos Giagos and Drew Dober. You've seen a lot of the worst.
Yeah.
That lightweight can show you, like, say, outside of the top 10 in terms of hard punchers. Is this the right move? Does he get his hand raised on Saturday? Tell me what you think of this fight.
It would have been great if the UFC just like kept giving him like really hard hitters. Like he goes up to welterweight and they put him against like Jeff Neal or I don't know who's a really big hitter for welterweight. I don't know.
Yeah,
mostly
Mateus Rebeski or somebody like who's not ranked but just still hits like a truck. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if moving up weight is really going to solve Ricky Glenn's problems. Yeah, you know, he's always been a pretty well-rounded fighter. He's a southpaw that has, you know, good output on the feet, very unorthodox style striking, very herky-jerky, weird movements. Though all that weird moves set up his shots because they kind of come off his feints, but he can overreach on his strikes. I mean, he was going against Christos Giagos, really reaching on his shots. I mean, he got blasted by Giagos, so you have to worry about that. Obviously, Drew Dober did the same thing. He has some pop, and maybe going up to welterweight, he'll carry some power with him. Throws a lot of body kicks. He's a sneaky wrestler. He has some work to do on the takedown defense. He's always been a weaker defensive wrestler. I would go back to like Grant Dawson smoking him in the grappling department. He also likes to fight off his back. Like instead of trying to scramble up, he'll throw elbows off his back, tossing up submissions, which I've never liked. And then obviously you have to worry about his durability. But he's been knocked out in the first round in back-to-back fights. He's not a young fighter. He's been around the UFC for a long time, but just in MMA for a really long time. So he's taken a lot of shots. The thing is, moving up to welterweight, like he was always going to be a little undersized, but Song Kenan is a big welterweight too. So like that he didn't even get like a smaller guy. Song is he's a decent boxer, though sometimes his output isn't the best. He'll throw way too many single strikes. When he's let his hands go, he's got a nice hard jab, good straight right. I like his check hook, check left hook. He's got some good power. He'll throw some spinning attacks, whatever. I'm never crazy about. He'll throw a lot of kicks. The big issue with him is that he's very hittable. He's always, lacked head movement. He's a very physically strong guy. I mean, the guy's ripped up. He doesn't look to wrestle too much, and his takedown defense is weird. Like he'll look for guillotines, which kind of set. Like I go back to like the Derek Krantz fight where Derek Krantz slammed him because of that. Though he almost guillotined him, he is hard to hold down, and he's got good cardio. Like. I going again back to the Krantz fight, like he's pressing hard in the third round in that fight. You just have to worry about his chin. I mean, he got knocked out by Ian Machado Gary. He's knocked out Max Griffin. Max Griffin is a kind of underrated striker, and obviously Machado Gary is a blue chip prospect. I'm not that very high in either. If Glenn was moving up and this was still his prime, I probably would pick him. I don't think it's his prime anymore. I think he's lost his step. I don't trust his durability. I really don't trust either's durability, but Song hits harder of the two. I think he makes it 3 fights in a row. I think he catches Glenn's chin. I see he does in the second round. Give me Song by second round TKO.
Yeah, I I wish I had some stuff to disagree strongly with you over just to make this preview of this particular fight more interesting, but I don't. I'm not particularly high on either guy, same as you, but of the two, I think Song's been a known quantity for several years now. He's 34. He hasn't really started to fall off, but he also isn't dramatically improved over the fighter he was 5 years ago. He's just sort of the same dude. I mean, first time I paid attention to him was when when Alex Morona went over and beat him in China, which was like 2018. He's still basically the same fighter, but of these two, yeah, he's the one that is more of the quote unquote natural welterweight. In Ricky Glenn, we're talking about someone that in the UFC fought Dennis Bermudez like a featherweight. Like that's, even if Glenn is a 6 foot tall guy, he's going to be undersized compared to Song. And while Song may not have the shot for shot power of the guys that have put Glenn out in his last couple fights, he's going to be the harder hitter. I think his size advantage is going to at least equalize the wrestling between the two of them. I do believe in Song's gas tank at 170, at least in his ability to fight at his preferred pace. Yeah, I mean, I see this one as a pretty straightforward decision win for Song as well. And I'm about as mortally certain as you could get that neither of these guys is a future top 10 fighter at 170. We head now to the lightweight division for a matchup between Tom Nolan and Alex Reyes. Nolan, the 24-year-old Aussie, is 7-1 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC out of season 7 of Dana White's Contender Series. He made his UFC debut back in January, got knocked out in like a minute by Nicolas Mota, came back in May and put away Victor Martinez in the first round with a brutal knee to the body and some follow-up punches. So he is looking to build on that momentum, continue putting his lone career loss in the rear view. In order to continue doing so, he will have to get past Reyes. 37-year-old Californian, 13-4 overall, 0-2 in the UFC. That's a little deceptive. His UFC debut was all the way back in 2017.
Yeah.
He got knocked out by Mike Perry. That should tell you how long ago it was, because Mike Perry is now two sports removed from fighting as a UFC welterweight.
Using the word sport very loosely there.
Two spectacles removed.
Okay, fair enough.
But he came back last September, got knocked out in the first round by Charlie Campbell. So he is 0-2 in the UFC over the course of the last 7 years. He is, of course, the brother of former UFC light heavyweight title challenger Dominic Reyes. Whether that is why he is still on UFC contract, or it is in particular so that they have Alex Reyes types to build the Tom Nolans of the world off of, I don't know. What I do know is that Nolan is about as big a favorite as you're going to find in the UFC this year. That is not a short notice substitution, a title fight, or a Bo Nickal fight, as Tom Nolan is minus 1,200.
Oh my God.
Alex Reyes plus 700.
I think it's like 450 or some shit like that.
And that's a decent line. Like Nolan, if you're not value shopping, and if you're betting on Tom Nolan here, you're probably not value shopping. You might get tricked into taking him at minus 1,500. It's not pretty. Here's the thing. I'm not sure I'm completely sold on Tom Nolan. Like, his obvious attribute is his size. His nickname is Big Train, and he is an absolutely gigantic lightweight. He's one of the biggest lightweights I've ever seen. Like, it's the same thing that I'll say about Johnny Walker. Like, I don't know if Tom Nolan is the tallest lightweight in the UFC. I don't know if he has the biggest wingspan, but my guess would be that his walking weight in shape, or his weight when he enters the cage, are as big as there are in the UFC. He's 6'2". He's got muscle on his frame. He is a big dude. He's a good striker that offensively, I think he's done a good job of giving himself weapons at range and weapons to deal with people that want to get inside his range. Defensively, not always. I mean, Nicolas Mota absolutely clocked him, and he clocked him in a way that basically punished him for all your typical tall man striking problems. Just, keeping your head on the center line, trying to avoid punches just by, moving your head straight back. Nicholas Mota, who is a 5'8" tank that does nothing but throw huge overhands, was a bad guy to try that against. I have no idea whether Nolan has corrected all of those habits. He's very young. He's just 24 years old. So there's every chance that he's made huge improvements there, but a lot of fighters with his kind of height advantage never make those improvements. They live or die by the sword, and they never really get better at it. The problem here is that even if he hasn't improved those things, I don't think Alex Reyes is the guy that's going to punish him for it. At this point, Reyes he's 37. He's about to turn 38. I feel bad saying this because I'm sure Alex Reyes does not see himself as a sacrificial lamb. I'm sure Reyes is like, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to shock the world. I'm going to shut up 24,000 Australians in Perth. I'm going to cut a crazy promo, and I'm going to be fighting, Justin Gaethje in a UFC main event 6 months from now. I'm sure that's what's in his mind. But for me, this is a little embarrassing for the UFC. The UFC has probably 60 or 70 lightweights on roster. They didn't need to do this. This is a matchup reminiscent of like a Bellator prelim. Reyes.
This is a true story. I once was at a Bellator, and the opening fight had a porn star in it. True story. And like the local media was like dying to meet her. I'm like, dude, she's not gonna fuck you. Like she's like
she's in this.
Maybe she will. I don't know.
Like if she's branching out into MMA, it's specifically probably because she doesn't want that kind of attention. Guys.
Yeah, maybe.
Did she win?
No, she got smashed. I'm trying to. Oh, who beat her up? It was somebody. I don't know. I'll have to look it up.
All right. Reyes, he's not a huge lightweight for a guy that fought at welterweight in the UFC, fought at welterweight in King of the Cage. He's not a huge guy. He used to be a pretty solid athlete, though not a Dominic Reyes level athlete. At 37, who knows how much of that is left? There wasn't enough fight in the Charlie Campbell fight to be able to tell, but it would take something freakish for Reyes to beat Nolan. It would take Nolan not just making a defensive lapse or a huge mistake, but doing it at just the right juncture that Reyes can take advantage. I mean, hell, if I'm Reyes, I'm even maybe trying to sell it and take him down. Because if you just park there at the outside edge of boxing range with him, it's going to be target practice. That's what I'm picking here. I'm picking target practice. Give me Nolan to bust up Reyes for 3 or 4 minutes and finish this thing late in the first round. Probably catches him coming in with some kind of giant knee or body strike like he did to Vic Martinez.
Yeah, so I had to look up who that porn star was. It was part of the Frank Mir versus Roy Nelson 2 card at Mohegan Sun. And
they're like, Roy Nelson cannot be the biggest pair of tits on this card. Get me a porn star.
Her name was Rebecca Brygman, Bryggman. She took on Elise Reed, so actually not a bad loss considering. And her porn star name is Orion Star, which probably caused my computer to crash now because I had to look up who that was. Yeah, man, this fight, like you were talking about Mike Perry doing other sports, and this is how my mind thinks. Like instead of thinking about this fight, I started thinking like what would be a fun sport if Mike Perry was like 2 sports. I want to do a 3rd sport, but did something that had nothing to do with combat sports. Like you got it. Like I think I'd rather watch Mike Perry like play somebody in chess than watch Alex Reyes get beat up.
Rather watch Mike Perry play darts.
Mike Perry probably throw it at the guy he's going against. Like you can't. There's no way Mike Perry's allowed to have a sharp object in his hands. If you did a spelling bee with Mike Perry and you started with like kindergarten words, how far do you think you'd get?
Unless you set him up to win by asking him to spell platinum or something, he'd be toast. Like he'd be toast early. Yeah.
He might not be able to spell Mike Perry. Yeah, like he's not beating some like Indian kid on ESPN. That ain't happening. No. Yeah, this fight. I gotta find it because I was mixing around my notes. So now I'm where is this fight? I might have just deleted it and said just put the word murder. and I mean seriously, like why is Alex Reyes still in the UFC? I mean, the guy hasn't won a fight in 7 years. I mean, the guy's old. He has had tons of injuries. When you watch him fight, I mean, he's an unorthodox striker. He tries to stick and move, throws a lot of winging punches. He has some pop in his hands. He's got pretty good footwork to get away. His best footwork would probably be to just turn and run. That would probably be the best footwork. But he will try to wrestle, and he has some subs on his record. But the issue is he can't take punches. He lacks durability. I mean, he's been easily knocked out in his last 2 fights. You move over to Tom Nolan, who, you know, he's only 24 years old, so you know I love that. He's a good athlete. He's a massive dude. He's like 6'3", long and lengthy. He's got good volume, very loose on the feet, very relaxed, fast hands, accurate, has some nice power, and he's not even coming into his power years yet. Throws good kicks, throws hard kicks. He's got some beautiful stepping knee in his last fight. Not a great wrestler, but if he gets to fight the ground, he's got some mean ground and pound. You know, you have to worry about his durability. I mean, the knockout to Nicholas Mota was bad. He was dropped by Victor Martinez in his last fight, despite like destroying Victor Martinez. But you said you're not high on Tom Nolan. Like, I can echo that, but we're talking about Alex Reyes. Like,
yep.
Like I don't have to be high on Tom. You could dug up the 1980s disco team, the Nolans, and I'll take one of those chicks to beat Alex Reyes. Like, and yes,
whoa,
yes,
that was.
You like that reference?
That was amazing. Like, just peeled that one right off the deck.
you said, oh, you know, I don't know if Tom Nolan has made major, you said huge improvements. Like he didn't have to make any improvements to Alex Reyes.
No.
I mean, the fight would be closer if he was fighting Dominic Reyes. I mean, this is going to be a murder. You know, this is an ultimate mismatch. I mean, Nolan looks like a real prospect. You know, Reyes seems to be they booked him just to make him, a prospect look really good in his home country. I think Nolan smashes him. I guess, he gets the crowd all excited with a first round TKO. How many of our listeners stopped listening because they had to go look up Orion Star?
Hopefully they just paused.
No. I actually hope they leave and come back. We get like twice the views.
2 clicks. Yeah.
2 clicks. So.
Featherweights take the cage next as Jack Jenkins looks to get back on track against Herbert Burns. Jenkins, the 31-year-old Australian, is 12-3 overall. He is 2-1 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He opened up his UFC run with back-to-back decision wins over Don Shainis and Jamal Emmers before running into, Chepe Mariscal, who just fought this past weekend. He fought him at UFC 293 last September. It was recorded as a TKO because he suffered kind of a freakish injury to, I believe, his left arm in the second round. But at any rate, goes down as a loss, his first loss in the UFC, his first loss of any kind in quite a while. He had been on like a 10-fight win streak. He will look to start another such streak at the expense of Burns. 36-year-old Brazilian by way of Florida is 11-5 overall. He's 2-3 since joining the UFC out of season 3 of the Contender Series. He opened his UFC run with back-to-back wins. That's the good news. The bad news is that was 4 years ago, and he's lost 3 straight since then, all by finish, really at least 2 of the 3 through exhaustion. He has second-round TKO losses to Daniel Pineda, Bill Algeo, and Julio Arce. The most recent of those, the Arce fight, was back in March at UFC on ESPN, Blanchfield versus Fior. Odds here, unsurprisingly, favor the Aussie heavily, not Tom Nolan heavily, but embarrassing by most other standards. Jenkins is minus 700, Burns plus 500. And I get it, man. This is another fight where I'm not sure to what extent I believe in Jenkins. I think Jenkins actually is a pretty solid hard to call a 31-year-old a prospect, but a solid relative newcomer to the UFC featherweight division. Like, I don't know if he's a future top 15 guy, but he strikes me as at least a guy that's going to stick around for a while, beat some good fighters. But at this point, the book is written on Herbert Burns. I would welcome being proven wrong here.
Who's writing a book about Herbert Burns?
I'm going to write it right now. I'm going to dictate the book on Herbert Burns, and
only on sale at SureDog.com. Ben will sign the one copy that sells.
He's 36 years old, so I would welcome being proven wrong if he makes some sort of late career adjustment as a 36-year-old featherweight, but I don't see it happening. And it's kind of the same thing I said about Muhammad Usman and Kamaru Usman when Mo Usman fought just a few weeks ago. You see what the difference is when two guys have roughly the same genetics, but only one of them has an insane work ethic, because his brother Gilbert Burns is, if anything, a bit of an overachiever in BJJ, in MMA, and Burns, the opposite, underachiever. And I feel unkind saying this, and you guys know, like, I tend to be diplomatic about these things, but Herbert Burns is a weight bully. He does not need to cut to 145 pounds. Like, he may be the smaller Burns brother in terms of frame, but he's taller than Gilbert Burns, and he's cutting to 145 pounds. And here's the thing. It doesn't say much, but Burns is a guy that experienced his best success when he was like, why am I killing myself to cut to 155 pounds? I'll just go up and be a short, explosive welterweight. And what do you know? He made his way to a title shot and came semi-close to knocking Kamaru Usman out. And like,
good point.
But Burns continues to park at 145 pounds, where he has 4 minutes of functional cardio. He has lost now 3 fights in a row where he was getting the better of it for about 4 minutes, and then all the wheels fell off the wagon. He is another guy. We talked about Pampas Gregorio on last week's card. Burns is an older and more established fighter that I put in the same category, where I don't know if I've ever seen worse cardio on a fighter this skilled in a weight division this low. This is a guy with like heavyweight cardio at 145 pounds. And so it's being a weight bully in a way that doesn't work, because he doesn't have a game built for quick finishes at the UFC level. I mean, he debuted by trashing Nate Landwehr and Evan Dunham, but once he kind of hit that next level, guys like Pineda and Algio that are durable, they weathered the storm. They came back and they kicked his ass. And Gilbert ended up having to carry him out of the cage, not because he was hurt, but just because he was tired. And against Jenkins, I don't know if he's even going to fare that well in those first 4 minutes. Jenkins is a powerful, athletic, well-rounded fighter that, I mean, he lost to Mariscal, but he was doing fine before then. Yeah, I think Jenkins is going to thrash Burns. Give me Jenkins to get slightly the better of a back and forth first round, and for Burns just to be toast at the end of that round. Jenkins takes him down or knocks him down early in the second, finishes on the ground. I'll say Jenkins by second round submission, but Jenkins by second round TKO on the ground would be equally likely.
Yeah, I mean, you made a really good point, about Gilbert moving up. That narrative of trying to be the biggest guy in the division and cutting all this weight, it just doesn't work. I mean, how many examples are there of people moving up in weight and completely changing their career around, And yeah, I mean, his own brother is one of the best examples. I mean, I think he had a great breakdown on Burns. I mean, his striking is either land a big bomb or throw something to set up his entries. I mean, he likes to get in the pocket and load big power shots. He's a brawler. He does have some power, but he doesn't react to being hit well. I mean, he almost turns away in his last fight. He's like completely yeah, it looked like talk about a bully. It looked like a kid bully beating up some nerd in the bathroom. The way he was turning away from the punches. He loves to throw like powerful kicks, and because he doesn't care if you catch his kick, he wants you to try to take him down. He likes to close the distance, get in a clinch where he grinds. He'll look for body lock takedowns. He will shoot from the outside, but he kind of telegraphs his entries. He's more likely to get the fight to the ground if he just like shoots in and then just pulls guard. He's a very good BJJ practitioner. I mean, he's an IBJJF medalist, amazing back takes, smother and top control. The issue is exactly what you said. He's one of the worst gas tanks in the history of the UFC. I mean, he his gas ran out against Daniel Pineda. And then he got battered. That he gassed out against Bill Algeo even quicker. It was like 2 minutes. I mean, I think it was the Algeo fight where Gilbert had to carry him out of the cage because he fought for 2 minutes. I mean, did it look like an episode of MASH? It looked like the Forrest Gump picking up freaking Lieutenant Dan. Gilbert needed to be yelling at. Herbert needed to be yelling at Gilbert like, "Leave me! It's my destiny. It's my destiny to die in the octagon."
You ain't got no legs, Herbert.
Yeah, holy moly. Jenkins, Jenkins, a guy, he's a well-rounded fighter, fights out of both stances, kind of stalks his foes, great volume. He switches stances to kind of take the ground. When he gets his point back up, he switches stances, closes this a little quicker, cuts a lot of angles to show a lot of his variety in striking. When he gets in the pocket, he works the body really well. Good kicking game, mean kicks to the body, good calf kicks. I like that he throws combinations that ends a kick of the combo. He mixes punches and kicks together well. He does avoid strikes by backing straight up, which could be an issue. Not necessarily in this fight, but just moving forward. He also will close the distance, like to use his size and battle in the clinch. He's got some really mean, dirty boxing, good knees inside. He has a judo background, so he'll throw some judo trips. He's a good wrestler. He's got some fast entries, great top game. I should say great top game because against Don Shane, he didn't have the best position, but he likes to advance position once he hits the ground. Good ground and pound. I've said it before. He has this Tito Ortiz game where he likes to sit in the guard and slice up some elbows. He has 3 subs in his record, but if you put him on the bottom, he struggles to get off the bottom. He put up really good pace against Shannis and didn't stop. Another thing I skipped over about leg kicks. He likes to feint and use leg feints, which I like. He sets up his kicks and stuff, but he'll fake a little bit, lifting his knee up and stuff. I mean, I think it's safe to say we know exactly what to get. Burns is going to be diving for takedowns, not getting them. Then he's going to completely gas out, and Jenkins is going to knock him out in the first round. And when Burns was can't even stand up on his own. Give me Jenkins by first round TKO.
The UFC 305 undercard heads to the women's flyweight division for a matchup between Casey O'Neill and Luana Santos. O'Neill, the 26-year-old Scottish-born Australian native, is 9-2 overall. She's 4-2 in the UFC. That's the good news. The bad news is that she won her first 4 fights in the UFC in mostly pretty dominant fashion. Since then, she has back-to-back losses, a decision loss to Jennifer Maia last March, and then a second-round submission loss to Ariane Lipski at UFC 296 in December. So O'Neill, between the back-to-back losses and a severe knee injury that required time off and surgery, has a bit to prove, a bit of former top prospect shine to reclaim. She had been scheduled to fight Teresa Bleda on Saturday. Bleda was forced to withdraw a couple weeks ago. In steps Luana Santos. 24-year-old Brazilian is 8-1 overall. She's a perfect 3-0 since joining the UFC about 18 months ago. She is coming in off of a first-round submission of Maria Agapova at UFC on ESPN, Namajunas versus Cortez, just back in July, about 5 weeks ago. Odds here, the late replacement did not do O'Neill a whole lot of favors, as she is a moderate underdog to Santos. Santos is minus 180, O'Neill plus 150. Keith, you and I have been doing these previews long enough that we saw when that crop of newcomers hit the women's flyweight division, and whether your personal preference was Aaron Blanchfield or Manon Fior or Casey O'Neill, they all seem to belong in the same conversation. 2 of them have panned out pretty damn well. O'Neill looked like she was right there with him, but all of a sudden she's got a lot to prove. to what extent are you still buying in on Casey O'Neill? And do you think she gets it done here on Saturday against Luana Santos?
I mean, not to the extent of those two, for sure. I mean, she's those two are like you walk in Harbor Freight and they're like the new toolbox, one of these big giant $1,000 toolbox with all the drawers, or a nice new Brad nailer or something. I mean, she's the free bucket you get for buying one of those at this point. You know what I mean? Like, or I don't know, they toss in some batteries for you or something. Like, I'll take it. Like, but you're not excited to get it anymore. I mean, it's do or die for her. I mean, she looked so bad lately. Looks completely different than the fighter that came to the UFC with so much hype. Being that she's only 26, I'm not completely giving up on her, but she's got to get going right now. The positives is she has nice output. Go back to her, like some of her wins. Antonina Shevchenko, Roxanne Modafferi, she beat those two girls just by pressure. Now again, Antonina Shevchenko, Roxanne Modafferi, two women. I'm not sure if Antonina is still in the UFC, but my point is like not making waves in the UFC and would be much lower if they were. She's a Muay Thai striker. Her hand speed almost seems like it's declined, which is really weird at 26 years old than when we first saw. Again, it might not be that her hand speed has declined. It might just be that she's fought fighters that are faster, so it doesn't look.
Well, I mean, it's worth mentioning that you said Antonina Shevchenko and Roxanne Modafferi, both women who are much older than her and two of the slower strikers in the division. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there you go. She does have some power, and being only 26, she's starting to enter her power years. She needs to improve her defense, though. I mean, she's so hittable. She keeps her chin high in the air. I mean, she got cracked by Ariana Lipski, which is a loss that just kind of aged well. Lipski's kind of turned the corner a little bit. She will look to wrestle, and she chains takedowns together well. Some good top game. If she gets the fight to the ground, she got some mean ground and pound. I mean, go back to like Shayna Dobson. She finished her with ground and pound in her UFC debut. Again, Shayna Dobson, who would fit the Shevchenko Modafferi category. She has submission threat. She got one against Laura Procopio. Again, she's looked sensational against four of the lowest talents in the UFC. She catches submissions in a scramble. You move to Luana Santos. I mean, I think she's good. I mean, she's only 24 years old. She's a good boxer. She could fight out of both stances, kind of gets her opponents to guess in that way. She uses a lot of feints to set up her shots. She's got tight boxing. She loves to dip down to one side and then throw like overhand on the other side. She throws her overhands hard. She does have power because she sits on her punches. And she's not even in her power years yet, which is cool. I mean, she knocked Juliana Miller out. She will throw a lot of kicks. Sometimes they'll throw them naked, which is an issue. She likes side kicks, like she was hitting Stephanie Egger with some. She doesn't check kicks, which is an issue. She also wants to be the one moving forward. Like, even though she's way better than Juliana Miller, she hated the pressure from Juliana Miller. But she's got some defensive holes. She likes head movement. She can close the distance and grind in the clinch. She has a judo background. If she gets to the fight to the ground, I mean, she's a judo black belt. She's a BJJ black belt. She hit Maria Agapova with this incredible judo throw. She's got 4 subs on her record, including subbing Maria Agapova. Sorry. The one concern so far in her UFC career is that she gassed a little against Stephanie Egger. As far as the fight goes, I think this is a mismatch. Would you say the betting line was?
It is Santos minus 180, O'Neill plus 150.
I don't think it's big enough. Like, I think Santos should be a bigger favorite. I think she dominates O'Neill everywhere. I mean, I know it's in O'Neill's backyard, and maybe you get some extra motivation and travel and everything. So maybe it's set right. But I mean, Santos is younger. She's faster. She hits harder. She has more variety in her striking. She's got better takedowns. She's probably the better grappler. I think O'Neill is tough. So I think she just takes a beat in front of her hometown crowd. I say it happens for 15 minutes. Give me Santos by decision.
Yeah, you kind of went to the heart of what I hoped you would go to, where it's not just a matter for O'Neill of having run into the next echelon of fighters, it's that she herself has not looked the same. And whether that's all attributable to her injuries or just age, maybe she'd be better off in a different weight class. Maybe she was never as good as we thought. I don't know. That will remain to be seen. If I could be assured that O'Neal was the same fighter she was up until about 2 years ago when she went on that run to start her, her UFC career, I'd say this is a hell of a fight, because I'm with you. Santos is a legit prospect, but at the same time, in 3 UFC fights, she's basically fought other grapplers like Juliana Miller, Stephanie Egger, and Maria Agapova are all people that do their best work on the ground. And O'Neal, as she was, again, up until early to mid 2022, would have been an interesting test there. This long, lanky, angular striker who has pop in all of her strikes, if not huge power, throws good volume. But yeah, she's looked so bad over the last couple of years. It's, and it's a shame. Like, I was definitely high on her as a prospect. I agree. Like, Santos, she's not as polished a striker as we've seen O'Neal be at her best, but she's the kind of striker that's probably going to give O'Neal fits. She's gonna come forward, make her uncomfortable. I'm inclined to give Santos a pass on getting tired late in the Egger fight. Like, she took it on short notice. It was up a weight class. She even missed that weight. I mean, she's a flyweight that weighed in at, like, I think 139 for a bantamweight fight. Yeah, like, even if I would favor Santos slightly, even if I thought O'Neal was back to her best version. And I have no reason to believe that. The O'Neal that has lost her last 2 fights, I think, gets washed by Santos. I'm with you. I think she makes it to the final horn, but I think Santos wins all 3 rounds and probably kind of styles on her. Next up on the UFC 305 prelims is a featherweight matchup between Josh Culibao and Ricardo Ramos. Culibao, the 30-year-old Australian, is 11-3-1 overall. He's 3-3-1 in the UFC, 3-2-1 at featherweight. He made a short notice debut a little over 4 years ago at lightweight against Jalen Turner, of all people. I'm inclined to just give him a complete mulligan on that one. Since dropping to his preferred weight class, he's 3-2-1. That's the good news. The bad news is that the 2 losses there are in his last 2 fights, as he has dropped back-to-back decisions to Laron Murphy and Danny Silva. So he'll be looking to start a new win streak here. He'll have to get past Ramos to do so. Ramos, 29-year-old Brazilian by way of Sacramento, 16-6 overall, 7-5 in the UFC. He is coming in on a 2-fight losing streak dating back to last fall. He got guillotined in the first round by Charles Jourdain at Fight Night Fizzy versus Gamrot last September, then came back this March and got guillotined again by Julian Erosa, this time in the first round at UFC on ESPN, Hebus versus Nami Yunus. Odds here, favor Culibao. He is -170, Ramos +140. I don't know what Ricardo Ramos can do aside from maybe walk out to protect your neck just to remind himself. Tell me how you see this fight going.
Nice job.
Thank you. Not enough fighters walk out to that one. It just seems like a real obvious pick.
Yeah,
anyway,
it is. It really is.
And it leads right off with Deck, who, as I know, is your favorite Woo MC. He's definitely one of mine as well. So yeah. Anyway, who you got in this one, and how do you think it plays out?
This is a fun fight. Both guys are, have had moments in the UFC, good moments. Ramos, he's a pretty well-rounded fighter. He's a very good athlete, spinning attacks, stuff like that. He's a Muay Thai striker with fast hands, likes to work from the outside. My issue with him with the strike is always he can admire his work a little bit and have too much of a low output, too many single strikes. He does have power. I mean, go back to the last fight against Julian Erosa. He showed some power in that fight. Hurt Erosa a lot. I mean, a lot of people do against Erosa. He's got a great kicking game. Tosses up high kicks so good because of his dexterity and his hips. He loves question mark kicks. the key has always been to press him on his back foot. I mean, I go back to the Tuivasa fight. That was something he was able to do to him. He likes to work in the Muay Thai plum clinch. He's people talk about his kicks and his striking, but he wrestles a lot. He likes to grind. He'll go in for takedowns. He likes body lock takedowns. He showed off some pretty solid takedown defense against Tuivasa. Though I've said this before, I think Tuivasa's wrestling's overrated. He's a good grappler. I mean, good top game. He gets the fight down. He got 7 submission wins. The problem is, he uses those long legs to get, if you take him down, he'll work on his back with his long legs, and he'll play BJ off his back, which I don't like. The problem is he's a good offensive grappler. He keeps getting caught. He got caught by Charles Jourdain. Then he just got caught by Julian Rosa, both by guillotines in back-to-back fights. So, as you mentioned, he definitely does need to protect his neck. Culibao is the opposite. Culibao is not a great athlete. I mean, I think he's a better athlete than he looks. I mean, the guy looks like a Cabbage Patch Kid, but he could he'd be the scrap. No, you know what he looks like? Remember the Garbage Pail Kids? They'll have funny. Yes. He would be like the scrappy one or something. That one wants to fight him. Like looks like a whip, but the guy can throw down. He's a good fighter. He's a very technically sound striker. Good boxing. He fights out of both stances. He uses a lot of pressure to beat his opponents. Good output. Throws straight shots down the pipe. He has deceivingly fast hands. He cuts angles well with his footwork to set up his shots. I like his check left hook. I'm sorry, my throat's bothering me today. He has some pop in his hands. I mean, he almost knocked out Charles Jourdain in that fight. He does better when he's the one pressing the action. He will move a lot when being pressured. The one problem is he'll move back to the cage. Though he can strike while backing up while he's retreating. He's one of the few guys who does well in that. He's got a great kicking game. And he also checks leg kicks, which I like. He's an underrated wrestler. Though he's not the best defensive wrestler. He gave up way too many takedowns to Danny Silver in their fight. He also struggles to get back up. He can catch a submission. He subbed Bagdasarian. I think the key to beating Ramos has always been to pressure him, crowd the kicker. If you want to get in a grappling battle, so be it. I mean, Ramos is good there, but I think Culibao can have an answer for that. I think that's exactly what he'll do. I think his output is going to be too much for Ramos. I think Culibao's going to face another guy that has such an advantage in the athleticism, and Culibao's going to win again. Give me Culibao by decision.
Yeah, I feel you there. And the thing is, you and I think we've previewed every single one of Josh Culibao's UFC fights. I think we've been at this long enough, but at any rate, we've previewed most of them, and both of us have kind of gradually had to come around on the guy. When he debuted and it was against Jalen Turner, up a weight class, Turner it looked like a fight that shouldn't have been sanctioned. Turner, this 6'2" absolute physical specimen, and Culibao, this slightly muffin topped feather. It was ridiculous. But since then, you pointed out, not only is he winning more than he loses, but he is routinely beating people that look like they should be able to kick sand in his face at the beach. And in terms of raw athleticism, should be able to. Charles Jourdain, Melsik Bagdasarian, Laron Murphy. No, there's something about Culibao that just leads you to underestimate his athleticism and therefore also to underestimate his fighting ability. And it's something natural to somebody that has Culibao's backstory, because he is one of those fighters who is open about, no, I was super fat and out of shape. I lost I went to a gym because I wanted to lose weight. I lost 80 or 100 pounds. And all of a sudden I realized I was actually kind of good at this. And normally when you have a fighter who has that kind of story, you can spot him. Josh Culibao, Lauren Murphy, hell, the coach at my home gym, Alex Morono. And those poor guys. And then you got those guys, got Martin Budai, and then you got Khalil Roundtree. But no, Culibao is more athletic, more skilled than I gave him credit for. And he still does have all the cliches that you apply to less athletic fighters. He's scrappy. He has an outstanding gas tank because that's something that is within his control. He uses pressure well. Got more power than you would think. Like none of his knockouts are one shot, just kill shots, but he hits hard enough that it changes people's game plan when they meet him. If this were earlier in Culibao's run, even notwithstanding the 2-fight losing streak he's on, I'd probably see sneaky upset potential in Ramos. Younger, more athletic, probably a harder hitter on a shot for shot basis. Definitely a better technical grappler, but I'm done getting fooled. I think Culibao is, like you said, he's going to make life uncomfortable for Ramos. His game plays well into Ramos's that way. He's going to push the issue. I do think him fighting in Australia this far up the card is going to make a difference. I don't think he's going to take his foot off the gas. Give me Culibao to get a 3rd round TKO on a frustrated, tired, dinged up Ricardo Ramos. Drive the crowd wild. Next up at UFC 305, and at least as the card is currently constituted, this will probably be the top prelim, a heavyweight matchup between Junior Tafa and Valter Walker. Tafa, the 27-year-old New Zealander, 5-2 overall, 1-2 in the UFC. He is coming in off a loss. He fought at UFC 298 back in February, where Marcos Rogerio de Lima sawed off his lead leg early in the 2nd round for a TKO win. He will look to bounce back here against Walker. 26-year-old Brazilian by way of Russia is 11-1 overall, 0-1 in the UFC. That one loss was his most recent fight. It was back in April at UFC Fight Night Allen versus Curtis 2, where he made an unsuccessful UFC debut against Lucas Dresky, though close, dropped a close decision to Dresky. Let's just put it that way. So 2 gentlemen looking to get back in the win column. This fight is effectively a pick'em. Neither guy is available at plus money. Most of your outlets have Tafa around -120, Walker around -110. Keith, as far as I'm aware, this is the first, or at least the most prominent case in MMA history of other brothers fighting. We never got Joe Ellenberger versus Mark Hughes. We never got Nick Serra versus Reagan Penn. Never got Chinzo Machida versus whatever Gegard Mousasi's brother's name was.
Imagine being the other brother and your brother's Justin Tafa.
Yeah, and here's the thing: 2 years from now, for all we know, Justin Tafa may be the other brother. Junior Tafa is younger, he's taller, and has more actual kickboxing experience. There's every possibility that Junior Tafa is the better of the Tafa brothers 2 years from now. For what it's worth, I think this one's going to be a fun one. There are a lot of heavyweight. Well, I mean, there's a reason we coined the term unranked heavyweight slobber knocker, because it's just that fight that the UFC puts in the card thinking, oh, everyone wants to see the big boys knock each other out, and instead they both gas out and you get just a terrible 3-round fight. I don't think we get that here. I do think someone is going to get trashed in the first 6 minutes of this fight. I'm just not sure which it is. Tafa, in a vacuum, Tafa has good weapons for a kickboxer, especially by heavyweight standards. Like, by all accounts, he should be better than Justin Tafa already. Junior has longer reach. He seems like more of an athlete, but I mean, by the eyeball test, he's more of an athlete. He has a broader arsenal of attacks. Like, Justin Tafa is a haymaker merchant with some surprisingly hard leg kicks. Junior Tafa actually throws kicks to all levels, has good power in both hands, but for whatever reason, that just hasn't translated yet. His only solid UFC win is like over Parker Porter, and Parker Porter's gone. Mo Usman grounded him out. Marcos Rogerio de Lima, who is a good heavyweight kickboxer, but should have been a tailor-made matchup for Junior Tafa, like crushed his leg with leg kicks. It just hasn't happened for him yet. Valter Walker, I mean, he's Johnny Walker's big brother, and I'm not making any untoward accusations here, but that nickname, the Clean Monster, there's a solid possibility that comes back to be really, really funny in hindsight. I have said this about other UFC heavyweights, and I'm going to say it about Valter Walker, and this is going to put him in the category of people like Jared Vandera, where I'm like, I'm not sure what Valter Walker does at a UFC level other than be absolutely gigantic. Like, he has a hint of Johnny Walker's athleticism, but he's not Johnny Walker. And he has most of Walker's bad habits defensively, and his gas tank is what Johnny Walker's probably would be if he fought at heavyweight instead of cutting all the way down to 205 pounds. Like, I'm not high on either of these guys as a future top 10 guy in this division. And this is one of those fights where if I'm right about how the fight looks, my pick has every possibility of looking extremely silly, because I think one of these guys is going to absolutely wash the other in the first round. I'm going to go with Tafa. Like, Walker is bigger, has longer reach, is probably going to be the heavier guy in the cage, but he's just not nearly as nifty a kickboxer as Tafa, doesn't have nearly as many weapons. I can see Tafa doing work on Walker's front leg, and once Walker finally adjusts to that, starting to punish him with kicks elsewhere, or just catch him coming in with his chin up and just lamp him. So give me Tafa by a knockout in the first round. And again, my second most likely outcome is that Walker knocks out Tafa in the first round. So only come at me if this turns out into a 3-round boring fight.
So if you saw me typing away, I was looking up all the nonsense brothers, the other brothers. I think I might find one.
Okay, what do you got?
Dan Miller for Josh Rochold.
Ooh. Wait, Jake? Josh?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm messing it up now. The Jared Rochold's brother. What's his name?
Jake.
I'm sorry. Jake Rochold.
It's so funny that Jake Rochold became the other Rochold brother.
Yeah, because he's actually the better wrestler.
Oh yeah, he was a 3-time national champ, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was one of the best wrestlers ever. Yeah.
Ever.
Well, that's the difference between 185 and heavyweight.
Yeah. And I mean, I wonder how much was he really interested. But yeah, maybe those. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm taking that back. I don't care. You win 3 NCAA titles. And Jared was an All-American, right? But he never. I mean, he was more successful in MMA, but no.
Yeah.
I mean, Nate and Frank Shamrock. Frank Shamrock versus Nate Diaz. Are they the other brothers?
Nick Diaz.
Nick Diaz.
It's Frank Shamrock. Well, Nick, I mean, in terms of achievements, Nick is the other Diaz brother now.
Yeah. Oh, Nick is definitely as well. There's Frank is.
Frank's more accomplished than Ken.
He's more accomplished than Ken. Yeah, I don't know. Someone in the comments. We're doing it on the fly, so someone in the comments will find somebody.
Oh, of course, Jay Petrie, king of MMA trivia and knowledge. Well, no, he threw me one. Alex Reyes, Dominic Reyes's definitely other brother that's fighting earlier in this card. He beat Yautsin Meza's bad brother, and Yautsin Meza is already not great. So that's a smaller version, but
he got one.
Tafa versus Walker, I think, is the
Yeah. So I can't delay talking about this fight any longer. Dude, this is going so bad. I was looking up. Who did you end up picking? I'm sorry. I was
Tafa by first round knockout.
Okay, good. I apologize for not paying attention. I was just trying to get a good trivia one for you. And I think you beat my my Rochold argument. I was doing like my research on this one, and I was probably about halfway through the research before I realized it was Junior Tafa fighting and not Justin Tafa. Oh shit!
Well, they might switch it this week. We've seen him do it before.
They may. Maybe I'll do 2 picks. Maybe we just do like, you know what? Let's just have the. This actually could possibly happen with these guys. Let's just have 4 and 4. Have all 4 brothers just duke it out at the same time. So. I mean, Junior. I mean, he's a kickboxer. Throws a lot of straight shots, not a lot of tells. He's accurate. He wraps his overhand right around his opponent's defense, which I like. He should be technical, but he can kind of get dragged into a brawl. He's more technical than his brother. He's a slip and rip brawler. He has some power. He doesn't check leg kicks. I mean, Marcos Rogério de Lima brutalized his legs. He's a terrible wrestler though. No offensive wrestling, terrible defense wrestling, no get up game at all. I mean, very similar to his brother. Valter Walker, but I like him when he's only 26. So I mean, he's a big dude. He's 6'6". He definitely needs some seasoning on the feet. Not technical at all. He likes to move forward and press the action. I mean, he when he's letting his hands go, he wants to brawl. He's got big power. He's got 6 TKOs. I like his stepping knees. He'll throw some high kicks. I mean, he hurt Alex Nicholson twice with a high kick. He will try to avoid strikes.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah. Nice. He'll try to avoid strikes by pulling his head straight back, which is obviously an issue, especially against someone who can crack like Junior Tafa. He usually just walks through punches and gets tagged, which is not a good strategy, when you get in the UFC. But what he wants to do is he wants to close the distance and he wants to clinch. He wants a classic slap and tippies type, titties type fight. Good knees inside. He will look to wrestle a lot. He's got some good entries. He needs better top control. When he gets on top, he can stall on top. But when he throws, he's got mean ground and pound. He's not much of a submission threat. He only has 1 sub on his record, and he's gassed out a lot in the past. I mean, it's not good when you're the other brother, and we're talking about Justin Tafa and Johnny Walker. I mean, Walker's had some main event fights and stuff, but you get my point. These are bottom of the barrel heavyweights. Tafa sucks at wrestling, and Walker will wrestle. I have no confidence in my pick, but I'm going to go Walker. I'm going to say he takes Tafa down. I think he lands some shots on the ground. You know what? I said he's not a submission threat, so let's say he gets a submission anyways. Give me Walker. I'll say he locks in a submission in the second round.
Next up at UFC 305, and at least as the card is constituted as of right now, this might be the main card opener, is a welterweight contest between Li Jingliang and Carlos Prates. Li, the 36-year-old from China, is 19-8 overall. He's 11-6 in the UFC. He has alternated wins and losses in his last 8 fights, dating back almost 5 years at this point. He's coming in off a loss. He fought at UFC 279, the card that Khamzat Chimaev ruined. Back in September of 2022, he was a guy that got shortchanged most of everybody out of the top 6 fighters on that card. Ended up dropping a split decision to Daniel Rodriguez. He's been on the shelf ever since due to a variety of injuries. He's back and he's taking on Prates. 30-year-old Brazilian is 19-6 overall. He is 2-0 since joining the UFC out of season 7 of Dana White's Contender Series. Since joining the UFC, he has back-to-back knockout wins over Trevin Giles and Charlie Radke. The most recent of those, the Radke fight, was at UFC on ESPN Cannonier versus Imavov back in June. So he'll look to make it 3 in a row, continue to announce himself as an exciting new addition to the UFC welterweight division. He is comfortably favored to get it done. Prates is minus 280, Li plus 220. Keith, Li Jingliang has not fought since UFC 279. He was like, I bought this fly-ass new suit for this thing. I was in the co-main event.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Everything went to crap. No, he's been injured, but he's back, and he's fighting a guy that the last time Li fought was still almost a year away from being on the Contender Series, and all of a sudden that guy is 2-0 in the UFC.
Yeah, that's good too.
Yeah, and has looked really good in beating some solid fighters. To what extent do you believe in Prates as a potential contender at 170? And do you agree with the odds makers who have installed him as basically a 3-1 favorite over a mainstay like Li Jingliang?
No. So there's a lot of questions. So do I believe he's a contender at welterweight? No. I mean, you're talking about arguably the best division in MMA, or at least in that range of divisions. Is he exciting? Is he fun? Is he talented? Could he crack the top 15? Yeah. Will he win the title? No, he's not going to win the title just because. I mean, ask that question about 99% of the welterweights. I'm going to say no. So that's not a knock on Prates. Should he be near a 3-1 favorite over Li Jingliang? No, I don't think. I mean, how many people I would have over a 3-1 favorite over Li Jingliang? Like 3 guys in the division, maybe 4 guys in the. I mean, I like Li Jingliang. So I mean, I don't want to go out brand here, but I mean, Bilal Muhammad, Leon Edwards, a handful of other guys, and that's not a knock on Prates. I like Li Jingliang. I mean, he's a well-rounded fighter. He's a counter-striking boxer. He likes to slip and rip and throw. What I like when he slips and rip, he responds with a combo, which I like. He's got fairly fast hands. He likes to get in the pocket, throw a lot of hard power hooks. His slip right hand is a beautiful thing. I mean, that's what he caught Muslim Salikov with. He has really surprising power. I mean, he's got 10 TKOs in his career. He's got a great kicking game, mean calf kicks. He can sneak in takedowns. Very underrated offensive wrestler. Weaker defensive wrestler. Like I go back to like Jake Matthews took him down. Neil Magny took him down pretty easily. But he's got heart and cardio. Like he's going to go hard all 15 minutes, and he's got a hell of a chin. He's faced some really good competition in UFC, and he's never been knocked out. Never backs down. Even like that freaking whole crazy debacle where he's got to go up and weigh in after making weight and all that nonsense. Like no complaint from him. Prates, he's a kickboxer, fights out of both stances. Loves to work from the outside, very relaxed in his striking, hangs his hands low, and then just kind of explodes. The issue that he kind of cruises at times, can spend too much time, picking up reads and giving away rounds, which is concerning because Li Jingliang is going to bring it to him. So you can't give away rounds against Li Jingliang, especially an intelligent fighter like Li Jingliang. He banks around with him. You might be in trouble. Especially if you're throwing single strikes and stuff. When he lets his hand go, he's accurate. Though. I mean, the dude's a sniper. He's like hurts guys with every punch he throws. Works behind a great jab. He's very accurate straight left, which is why I kind of like him in the southpaw stance, even though he fights out of both stances. His straight left is a deadly blow. I mean, I've compared it in the past to like Conor McGregor, which like his feedback left hand is beautiful. He has serious power. He's got 14 TKOs. He's got a really good kicking game. I like his teep kicks. I like his calf kicks. He's got a quick high kick. I like his step and knee. I mean, like Charlie Radke, he hit him with a step and knee that crushed him. Good takedown defense. Not much offensive wrestling, but good takedown defense. And if taken down, he'll pop right back to his feet. I think this is a great fight. I think it's more like a fight that's going to be definitely under the radar. This is a big step from the competition for Prates. Li Jingliang is so freaking tough. He's definitely he fits in that overachieving category. Man, I think this should be close to pick him. I wouldn't. I mean, if I was betting, I would bet on Li Jingliang on the value. As far as prediction, I'm still going to go with Prates. I mean, he's such a great striker. He hits so hard. He's so fast. I love those knees up the middle. I think he's going to be too fast for Li Jingliang. I think Li Jingliang will put himself in the best opportunity to win. He'll have moments, but for the most part, Prates will pull away. I don't think he gets the stoppage because nobody else has done it to Li Jingliang. Knockout. I say he does it for 15 minutes. Give me Prates by decision.
Yeah, I'm with you in being. I'm pretty damn excited for Carlos Prates in the UFC. And I thought of him as a mildly interesting prospect when he went on the Contender Series, but back-to-back knockouts of Trevin Giles and Charlie Radke, definitely my ears have perked up a little bit. Him moving to train with the Fighting Nerds, you know what? There's a reason everybody flocks to the hot team, but God, if you're a Brazilian with a promising but incomplete game, why wouldn't you go there now? Because obviously there are plenty of teams that could contend for team of the year or best team in MMA over the last 2 years or so. But you want to talk about a team that takes specialists in different disciplines and makes them well-rounded enough to win. Fighting Nerds is where it's at. Maybe it's just a really appropriate name. Prates, yeah, long, lanky kickboxer with, solid, kickboxing and Muay Thai experience before MMA. And the first question the first couple questions you always come with when someone like that moves into high-level MMA, how are they going to react to being put on their back foot? How are they going to react to people trying to take him down? The Trevin Giles fight, I mean, Giles is a big, athletic, good kickboxer with good power in his own right. And Prates, it wasn't even one of those things where Giles is winning until somebody hits the Death Star in the right place. Like, Prates really did kind of handle him. And then Charlie Radke, where everybody in the building knew that Radke needed a takedown if he was going to survive this thing, Prates was just timing his entries beautifully. Radke struggled so hard even to get close enough to Prates' hips to get an earnest takedown attempt going. He had a lot of things where he kind of grabbed a single and just had to bail immediately because Prates had an underhook already scampering away. He ended up nailing Radke with a knee to the body, which had really just been kind of set up by him timing him so well for the 4.5 minutes before then. All that leads me to believe that he's going to punish Li Jingliang. If Li is the same guy he was in his last 4 or 5 UFC fights, this is a banger of a fight that I do think favors Prates as the younger, fresher fighter. But the idea that almost 2 full years on the shelf and health issues might have compromised Li at all makes me feel even more strongly that Prates has this one. Li is a guy that, I mean, he was probably never going to break the top 10 and become a real contender, but you mentioned it. In beating people like Muslim Salikov, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Eliseo Capoeira, he had at least crowned himself the king of the welterweight action fighters. Like that whole flock of welterweights that always seems to hang around that 11 through 20 spot. He was knocking all those guys out. If he's that guy, he gives Carlos Prates a hell of a fight, and Prates, eventually pulls away late just on cleaner, more accurate striking. If Li's slowed down, if his incredible durability is compromised at all, I could see Prates being the first guy to finish Li with strikes. And I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb and call for that. Give me Prates to style all over Li Jingliang, get a stoppage in the 3rd round. It may even be a slightly mercy stoppage by the ref where Li has just been getting the heavy bag routine put on him for 12 minutes. He gets rocked against the fence and ref jumps in and ends the thing. And a few people will complain, but I won't, because I like Li Jingliang and I want him to keep his brain cells. Give me Carlos Prates by 3rd round TKO. Next up at UFC 305, if you ever needed proof that having a lovable personality and a memorable gimmick gets you insurance with the UFC, take note that not only is Tai Tuivasa still in the promotion on a 4-fight losing streak, but he is on a pay-per-view main card. The man they call Bam Bam, looking to do his first shoey in several years, at least on camera. For all I know, he drinks out of shoes at home all the time. Anyway, looking to do his first in-cage shoey in several years, get back on track, snap this losing streak against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Tuivasa, 31-year-old Aussie, is 14-7 overall. He is 8-7 in the UFC, and he is as streaky as they come. His UFC run is 3 wins, 3 losses, 5 wins that saw him break all the way into the UFC heavyweight top 10 with a knockout of Derek Lewis in Lewis's hometown. But since that celebratory moment a little over 2 years ago, he has lost 4 straight fights, all by finish. Those losses against Cyril Gane, Sergey Pavlovich, Alexander Volkov, and Marcin Tybura. The most recent of those, the Tybura fight, was in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 239 back in March. Tuivasa will look to snap this losing streak against Rozenstruik. 36-year-old Surinamese fighter is 14-5 overall, 8-5 in the UFC. He is coming in off a win. He at least momentarily exposed then undefeated prospect Shamil Gaziev in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 238 back in March, just outclassing and outlasting him on the way to a really quitting on the stool stoppage between rounds 4 and 5. Prior to that, Rozenstruik had been kind of alternating wins and losses over the last few years as a reliable fringe contender and source of highlights. Odds here favor the visiting fighter pretty heavily. Rozenstruik is minus 225 to get it done on Tuivasa's home court. Tuivasa plus 175 coming back as your underdog. Keith, I'm going to flip this one to you. It is a couple of heavyweight knockout artists, neither of whom is ranked right now. The UFC apparently not having given up entirely on either one. Who gets it done? What does the fight look like? And are we going to be wishing they hadn't booked it?
What does it look like? I don't think it's going to be a battle, wrestling battle. I don't think we get Gable Stevenson versus Paris there. What's his first name? What's Paris's first name? I can't think of it. But, he didn't medal in the Olympics, so screw him. I mean, he did win the Hodge Trophy, whatever. Mason Paris. That was it. I'll start with Tuivasa. It's his home country. I'll say this: Tuivasa is more athletic than he looks. He's a more technical striker than he gets credit with. Like he's good at measuring his foes to land big shots. He's got fairly fast hands. He has earth-shattering power. I mean, like he knocked out like Derek Lewis and somebody else he knocked out bad. I don't remember. He knocked out Derek Lewis. He throws like crushing calf kicks. The problem is he's been hurt a lot, defensively. He takes a lot of damage. I mean, go back to like Ciryl Gane teeing off on him for a bunch of rounds. He got knocked dead by Sergey Pavlovich. So you have to worry about his chin. I actually said that we don't expect a wrestle effect. He will actually sneak in a takedown here and there. And he's got better takedown defense than people think. I mean, he saw some takedowns from Stefan Struve. But he was, when I say he has better takedown defense than you think, like, what I mean is, if you're not a like halfway decent wrestler, you're not going to get him down. The problem is, if you are a halfway decent wrestler, like a Sergey Spivak, then you get headlocked, and he struggles from the bottom. And he was quickly subbed by Spivak. He was quickly subbed by Tybura. Rozenstruik, he's a good kickboxer, very loose and relaxed. He's a counter striker. He can be way too low output for me though. And it's not one fight. He's done this in so many fights. Ciryl Gane fight. Everyone remembers that knockout against Alistair Overeem, but that was a fight that he was giving away big portions of the fight, but not throwing hands. Junior Dos Santos, another one. I mean, even his last fight against Gassiev, if he stepped on the gas, he probably could have got a great spectacular KO. I mean, his opponent was done for rounds, just kind of hanging on. When he throws his hands, he's good. He's got quick hands, very short shots, not a lot of tells. He's got a good power jab. He has good power. The broadcast team will pretend that he's Francis Ngannou the way he punches. That's not the case. They'll keep showing like that one punch where he busted Alistair Overeem's lip open. His best knockout is probably the deadly hook he landed on Augusto Sakai. Because of his Muay Thai striking style, he stands directly in front of his opponents and he eats a lot of shots. He's taken tons of damage. Make matters worse, he steps straight back to avoid shots. He has no offensive wrestling at all. He's a terrible defensive wrestler. If he can't get off the bottom, he struggles to get off the bottom. And I'm worried about his chin. He's been smashed by Alexander Volkov. He got smashed by Francis Ngannou. He's been knocked out a lot. He's taken a lot of damage. I'm not very high on either guy. I'll say this. I think the blueprint of these guys is a little different than what people think. Like, I think Tuivasa is a more technical striker than he gets credit with. I also think Rozenstruik isn't the deadly striker that people pretend he is. And I really want to take Tuivasa. It's his home country. He's probably, other than Adesanya, I think he's going to get the biggest pop in the crowd. I mean, either him, maybe Hooker, but he's definitely. I mean, he gets a knockout and the Stewies are going. Like, it'll be a highlight of one of the highlights of the night. Yeah. I just think, man, I really want to take him, and my gut is telling me that he's gonna catch Rozenstruik, but Rozenstruik is still more tactical. I think Tuivasa might overextend himself trying to get that spectacular knockout. Tries too hard to try to accept the crowd. And I'm gonna say he walks into something. I don't trust his durability. I don't. If Rozenstruik turns up the volume a little bit, he can win this easily. But I think he just walks into something. Give me Rozenstruik by second round TKO.
Yeah, I agree with basically everything you threw out there. It's been an interesting viewing as Tuivasa. First, ascended all the way, not just into the UFC top 10, but probably on the borders of the top 5. Like when he knocked out Lewis, like Lewis wasn't on the downslope yet. It didn't end up aging well because Lewis went on this bad streak. But at the time, I mean, I remember picking Lewis. I hadn't learned the folly of picking Lewis in his hometown yet. But it felt as though Tuivasa had sort of caught lightning in a bottle and probably peaked higher than his actual skill level would dictate. But in his 4-fight losing streak since then, he lost 4 in a row and he's still fighting top 10 fighters. He's not been given a break at all by the UFC. It's interesting because obviously the UFC wants to keep the Tai Tuivasas of the world around. It's extremely rare to be a fighter who is memorable and has a built-in fan base that isn't actually a top-level contender. It's hard to do. It's hard to be a Donald Cerrone or a Nate Diaz type, and Tuivasa has some of that. He gets a huge pop everywhere. He's obviously going to get a huge one in Australia. And Rozenstruik is a reasonable step down from Gane, Pavlovich, Volkov, Tybura, where finally Rozenstruik is someone outside the top 10, probably outside the top 15, and a little bit more of a palatable style matchup. We kind of knew what was going to happen when Marcin Tybura fought Tuivasa. You pointed out Tuivasa, especially defensively, has a really, really bad ground game. It's not that bad that he lost to Alexander Volkov, but if you're so bad on the ground that Alexander Volkov knocks you down and is like, oh, I'm going to jump on this dude and submit him, you know something has, like, that there's an imbalance going on there. Volkov becomes the third man in UFC history to successfully get an Ezekiel choke. But those things are not things that Rozenstruik is going to do to Tuivasa. Like, if Rozenstruik knocks down Tuivasa, he's either going to try to jump on him and pound him out, or he's going to motion him to get back up. There's nothing that Tybura did to Tuivasa that Rozenstruik's going to try to do. Like, Rozenstruik's routes to victory against Tuivasa are the Gane or Pavlovich routes, where Gane made Tuivasa look clumsy and slow, made Tuivasa chase him, ran him into strikes, out-volumed him, just had much better footwork, and eventually put him down with an accumulation of damage. Then Pavlovich just stronger, faster, throws straighter punches, and just blitzed him in like a minute. Those are the things that Rozenstruik will have to kind of emulate. I like that you pointed out that Tuivasa is niftier and more technical and more diverse than you would guess from looking at him. He looks like every Polynesian heavyweight, going back to Mark Hunt, where, yeah, because he's got a few extra pounds around his waist and he's stocky for a heavyweight, you assume that he's just not as quick on his feet as he is. But he's quick, throws great leg kicks, obviously has good power in both hands. And you pointed out that Tuivasa is more technically adept, more athletic than you would guess. And Rozenstruik is less so than you would think from this Surinamese fighter. And Suriname has always been a pipeline of talent to like Dutch kickboxing. You know, it's a former Dutch colony. They speak Dutch there. But yeah, Rozenstruik in MMA is basically a high power, low volume brawler. Like, he throws a pretty basic repertoire of strikes, and they aren't that technical. He's just fast, powerful, and usually it works. I'm not that surprised at the line. I mean, Tuivasa's on a bad losing streak, but the same way that you were tempted to take Tuivasa in the upset here, I'm taking him. If he loses, I think it's because you're exactly right. He falls victim to the Derek Lewis thing, where he loads up too hard or overextends himself trying to get a highlight reel knockout in front of the Australian fans. If he can be patient like he was in the Lewis fight and wait for his opponent to overextend himself, I think he sleeps Rozenstruik. I was hoping this was going to be our consensus upset pick of the night, but I'm the one going out on a limb here. Give me Tuivasa to get a first round knockout of Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And I recognize that Rozenstruik has every possibility of knocking out Tuivasa, on the flip side. But for as long as this fight goes, I think it's any man's fight. I don't even think it's one of those fights where one of these guys is going to gas out horribly. They'll both be dangerous the whole time. So hopefully that'll maintain some interest if this goes past the first round, but I don't think it does. Tuivasa first round knockout. Third from the top at UFC 305 is a lightweight matchup between Mateusz Gamrot and Dan Hooker. Gamrot, the 33-year-old Pole, is 24-2 overall. He is 7-2 since joining the UFC as a former two-division lightweight and featherweight champ in KSW. He is coming into this fight on a 3-fight win streak dating back about a year and a half. He has wins over Jalen Turner, Rafael Fiziev, and most recently at UFC 299 back in March, a unanimous decision over Rafael dos Anjos. He will look to make it 4 in a row, assert himself as a fringe title contender at the expense of Hooker. 34-year-old New Zealander is 23-12 overall. He's 13-8 in the UFC. It is worth noting that he's 13-8 overall in the UFC. He's 10-4 at lightweight. He spent a good amount of time, especially early on, visibly killing himself to make featherweight. Not only did he not look healthy, he went 3-4 at featherweight. So lightweight, definitely his best division in terms of results. And he's on a 2-fight win streak. Those go back almost 2 full years because he's been on the shelf for a variety of issues, but he has a TKO win over Claudio Puelles back at UFC 281 in November of 2022 and a split decision win over Turner at UFC 290 last July. Hooker stepping into the cage for the first time in a little over a year. The UFC's matchmaking did favors for most of the Australian, New Zealander fighters on this card, embarrassingly so in some cases on the prelims. Not in the case of Dan the Hangman Hooker, as he's one of the bigger underdogs on the card. Gamrot is minus 330, Hooker plus 240. Keith, I love this fight. Do you love this fight? Tell me if you do, and tell me who you think wins.
Okay, let's do it backwards. How would I make my prediction and then I break down the fighters?
Sounds good.
I love this fight if I'm a Gamrot fan. If I'm Dan Hooker and his team, I hate this fight. Gamrot's gonna do what Gamrot does. Gamrot's gonna put him on his back. You said it. Like, why does the UFC hate Dan Hooker? I mean, this guy's been like ultimate company man. And this guy's. I remember when he fought in was it New York or Boston? I can't remember when I saw him. No, it was New York. And he ended up winning. And he was like, I just want to fight in his home country. And he's like, I'll fight anybody. And then some guy asked him specifically about a guy. He's like, yeah, I'll fight anybody. And then 1 minute later, another media guy asked him about another specific fight. He's like, dude, I will fight anybody. He said, is he somebody? Then I'd fight him. I don't know who he was talking about, but anybody.
Guys, if anybody in the media is watching this, don't do that. That's why so many of the fighters think we're idiots.
Yeah, it was just so. I can't remember, but it was one guy was talking about it, and he's like, "Oh, would you be interested in a Paddy Pimp fight?" He's like, "I'll fight anybody. I want to fight in Perth." And the next guy was like, "So McConnell had a really good win there. Would you be interested in fighting him in Perth?" Like, "I will fight anybody in Perth." He said it again, anybody.
At least push the boundaries, guys. You're like, Chase Sherman needs a fight.
Anybody? You'll fight Francis Ngannou? What? So, I mean, Gamrot's going to take him down. He's going to keep him down for almost the entire fight. I think he eventually finds a submission, too. Give me Gamrot by second round submission. As far as I'll break down the fighters real quick, this skill set, because some people really care about that, but I'm taking. I mean, Hooker, he's a good striker, longer range striker, pretty accurate. He's got nice power, good footwork. Very good at getting his opponents to chase him and then stopping suddenly and beating them to the point of contact. He uses his size well, from distance. Check left hook is probably is one of his best tools. He can strike while backing up, which is pretty impressive. He uses his keeps his range by using his knees up the middle. Good kicking game, nice teep kicks. This one's been in my notes for a while, but it was so impressive. Like he beat Ally Quinto with just kept kicking him, the whole fight. Something he could do. He does have long legs, so he kind of goes both ways. Where he's open to getting his leg kicked. I mean, Edson Barbosa, who's obviously legendary, but I mean, one of the most brutal, kicking performances ever was Edson Barbosa just butchering Dan Hooker, specifically to his legs.
And then finished it to the body.
Yeah, he had him to the body, but he was beating him everywhere. But but it was a lot of leg kicks. Historically, Hooker's an underrated wrestler. He's good at getting the clinch, using his size, dropping down on the hips. He also looks like a little slide by. He will shoot for takedowns. I mean, I go back to like the Dustin Poirier fight. That was a long time ago, but he took Poirier down 4 times. Nasrat Haqparast took him down 3 times. He'll also like catch a body kick and take it down that way. The issue is he doesn't wrestle enough. He also defensively, he has that tall man's defense where he is hard to take down because he's got the long legs and he can get his hips wide and land elbows. But then he also got taken down by Jalen Turner, who's really not, an underrated grappler himself, but still like not a powerful wrestler. He did show against Claudio Pérez. He's tough to submit. And, I'm always worried that his durability is just going to fall apart because he's taking ungodly amount of damage. I mean, Barbosa, the Poirier fight, the Felder
The Barbosa fight was 5.5 years ago. If you had asked me, like on Christmas of 2018, is Dan Hooker still going to be a top 10-ish fighter in 2024? I would have bet a lot on no. And it's not because I don't believe in Dan Hooker. It's like, no, Dan Hooker just aged 10 years in one night. And he gets hit. Yeah. Like it's shocking.
Then you throw a knockout to Michael Chandler, and you throw the beating he got from Arnold Allen. It just keeps adding up. So
5-round fights with Dustin Poirier and Paul Felder.
Yeah, the chin can instantly just Jalen Turner fight. So I mean, it could all fall apart instantly. Gamrot, he's also a larger lightweight, southpaw, very athletic, moves very well. He's a better striker than he gets credit for because his wrestling overshadows his striking. He's a pretty technically sound striker, good footwork, constantly cutting angles, switches stances in mid-attack, quick hands, keeps everything tight inside. He's accurate. He loves to get in the mid-range and unload because 2 reasons he can land straight, but also keep him close enough that if he wants to wrestle, he's in that range. He has some pop, like he hurt Scott Holtzman, he hurt Arman Sarukian. Though he did eat some big shots against Sarukian and Kutulase landed some big shots on him. He's an incredibly fast wrestler, fast entries, so good at getting to the second level, or driving through hips, or just getting in and then cutting it, getting the look behind his opponent's back and cutting the angle really well. Drive through the hips kind of guy. The only guy he struggled to take down was Beneil Dariush. He will at times not set it up and kind of just dive in, but he's so relentless. He'll eventually get you down. His best entry is probably his single leg that he follows. Like he'll shoot the single, then come back the other way, misdirection, kind of run the pipe. Really good at winning scrambles. If he gets you down, good top game. It goes back to like the Jeremy Stevens fight where he subs him super quickly. I don't like that he'll go for leg locks, something that I hate. But he does use them on the bottom to kind of create a scramble. So I'll take the positive for that. If taken down, he's like instantly moving, hitting Granby's. And he showed great cardio in wars against like Sarukian, Arnold Allen. I know that was only a 3-round fight, but I didn't get my prediction. So Gamrot wins by second round submission.
I love the breakdown there. Gamrot, you kind of mentioned his wrestling. He is one of the best wrestlers in the division. He's one of the better wrestlers in the entire UFC. And he is a great wrestler, specifically in a way that makes him a whole hell of a lot of fun to watch. I understand that there is a certain type of fan that is never going to love a fight that takes place primarily on the ground or in wrestling in transition. But for anybody else who sort of doesn't think they like the ground game, I would point to a good Mateusz Gamrot fight. Just because it's not static. You mentioned that when he's taken down, he's instantly in motion, just doing funk shit, doing Granby rolls and things to keep things moving, trusting that he will come out the better of the two. Yeah, he's a blast to watch. You mentioned that he's a pretty good sized lightweight. To the point that it's hard to reconcile that with the fact that he also fought at 145 in KSW. Even if he was the lightweight champ and he dropped down to 145 just once to fight for the vacant title just so he could be a 2-division champ. Nonetheless, the fact that he made 145 and in good enough condition to beat a good fighter and become the 2-division champ, it's tough to reconcile when you look at the guy now. It's the same thing as looking at Paddy Pimblett, well, especially between camps, Paddy, and being like, dude, how did you fight at 145 in Cage Warriors? Guys, the reason is the US and USADA meant something. There's a reason European fighters could make those unbelievable weight cuts. Anyway, as far as the prediction, I think you put it perfectly. For all the things that Dan Hooker does really well, and he does a bunch of things really well. He looks like a lanky, dangerous kickboxer, and he absolutely is that, but he is a sneaky good offensive wrestler. He is more than capable of taking care of himself on the ground. Early in his career, he was actually like a good offensive grappler that used it a lot. He was a serious submission threat. At this point, he's been in the UFC for almost a decade, over 20 fights. He has 2 submissions in the UFC, and they are both identical. They're both from his opponent shooting straight into a guillotine. I forget the first one, Mark Adiva maybe, and then the other one was Mark Chikese. But I suppose he could threaten Gamrot with that. But the thing is, if Gamrot shoots straight into a guillotine, I don't think Hooker can finish the guillotine on Gamrot. Like, that's just the kind of situation where Gamrot thrives, and 10 seconds later, he'll be on Hooker's back. It is a stylistic matchup that, for me, heavily favors Gamrot, and that is even assuming that Hooker is not compromised by the ungodly amounts of damage he has taken, over the last 9 years or so in the UFC. He is an old 34. He is, I mean, I am a Dan Hooker fan. The UFC is a more fun place with him in it. I think he's got a cool personality. His fights are always fire. This one, as you kind of said, Keith, it may not be your favorite fight unless you're a big Mateusz Gamrot fan, because this, I think, is going to be pretty one-sided. You had Gamrot by second round submission, I believe. I'm feeling the same as you. Gamrot's going to ground Hooker early and often and do damage in advanced position and threaten while he's there. It's not going to be a comfortable wrestling-based washing for Hooker. Give me Gamrot by a third round finish. I'll say he gets a TKO on the ground, but a submission would not be out of the realm of possibility either. That brings us to the co-main event of UFC 305, an all-Oceanic flyweight matchup between Kai Kara-France and Steve Erceg. Kara-France, the 31-year-old Kiwi, is 24-11 with 1 no contest overall. He's 7-4 in the UFC. He is on a 2-fight losing streak. Only the first losing streak of his career since dropping the flyweight. In his last 2 fights, dating back almost exactly 2 years, he has a third round TKO loss to Brandon Moreno. And then in his most recent appearance last June in the headliner of UFC on ESPN 46, he dropped a close split decision to Amir Albazi. So a little over a year later, he is trying to snap that losing streak against Erceg, one of the more pleasant surprises in the recent history of this division. 29-year-old Australian is 12-2 overall. He's 3-1 in the UFC. Came in as a very unheralded flyweight prospect, ripped off 3 straight wins over David Dvorak, Alessandro Costa, and Matt Schnell over the course of basically the last year to win his way to a shot at the flyweight title at UFC 301 back in May. He dropped a unanimous decision to Alexandre Pantoja that was very close. Everybody, including Pantoja, seemed to feel that way about it. Erceg seems to think that he had the fight in the bag and blew it. That will remain to be seen, but he is favored to take a step back in the direction of another shot here, as he is a 2-1 favorite over Kara-France. Erceg minus 200, Kara-France plus 170. Keith, Kai Kara-France is 7-4 in the UFC, but the 4 losses are to Brandon Moreno, Brandon Royval, Brandon Moreno, and Amir Albazi.
Yeah.
There's not a loss in there. Those are top 3 fighters, not even top 5, top 10. They're top 3 fighters. Like Brandon Moreno, your multiple-time champion. Royval, your multiple-time title challenger. Albazi, probably your next guy to fight for the title. He's been right there. And in most of these fights, he's been right there. Like, I don't think anybody's really blown him out from pillar to post. He's been a pleasant surprise, kind of like one of my all-time favorite fighters, Ian Nicoll. He went from being just another pretty good bantamweight to being a world-class flyweight. You know, you and I are both skeptical of fighters dropping weight as a cure to all their ills. But when you're talking about people that had sort of been waiting for the existence of a division that was best suited to their bodies, it's a whole different story. And I think that's the case for Kai Kara-France. I mean, he had a long career, mostly in the Pacific Rim, Southeast Asia, Australia, fighting at flyweight when he could, mostly at bantamweight, just kind of waiting for top level promotions to have a place for him to go.
Perfect. Sorry to interrupt you. A perfect example of that. And I mean, a different time, but Demetrius Johnson. I mean, Demetrius Johnson used to fight at bantamweight until there was flyweight.
Yeah, Demetrius Johnson.
He was a very good bantamweight, and then he turned into like an all-time great, maybe the greatest fighter ever. You know, in the conversation, he's in the club. You know. Yeah.
Valentina Shevchenko on the women's side of the same. Yeah.
Another good example. Yeah.
He hasn't quite gotten over the mountain yet, but again, he can point to having no embarrassing losses in the UFC, and if he can make short work of Erceg in a way that Alexandre Pantoja couldn't, you know, that's going to be a big feather in his cap for Erceg. If he wins 1 or 2 fights, the UFC will not have a hard time selling a rematch with Pantoja. He was there. He was winning the fight for a while. And while a lot of fighters who lose close fights are going to say, I should have won, or I had it in the bag, I let him off the hook, I think his loss to Pantoja, I don't know who I'd pick in a rematch. I'd have to rewatch the whole first fight at least once. But I remember us talking on the recap of that one. I mean, it was just back in May, and saying, if you want to tell me that the difference in this fight was Pantoja's superior experience in 5-round fights, I'm willing to accept that. Erceg has been such a pleasant surprise. We've talked a couple times on this card about people whose eyeball test leads you to underestimate their athleticism, underestimate their overall skill. Erceg is way up there. Erceg, he's got that thing. Looks kind of like Lozon and Luke Kumo had a kid.
Yeah.
He looks fit, but he doesn't look like he doesn't look like one of the toughest fighters in the world.
No, he looks like a guy that like did cross country, so that's why he's fit.
Yeah, there you go. That's very much the case. But not only is he obviously an outstanding fighter in terms of skill, he's pretty athletic. He's a better boxer than I gave him credit for. He's got a pretty long frame. He uses it pretty well. For a guy that is not a lights out wrestler, he's pretty good at getting fights to the ground under his terms, either taking advantage of his opponent's choice to take him down, taking advantage of his opponent's mistakes, timing things, catching kicks. Like, just surprisingly well-rounded fighter. I think he has the advantage over Kara-France on the ground. Again, especially if you can get it to the ground other ways than, like, you know, pulling guard or trying low percentage stuff. If he can get the fight to the ground more than a couple times, either in transition where they're both rolling all over the place, or just being able to get Kara-France in and settle in top position, I think that heavily favors him. On the feet, he can probably take care of himself against Kara-France, but Kara-France is one of the harder hitters in the flyweight division. He's a harder hitter than I think any of the people Erceg has faced yet. Like, Alexandre Pantoja is a great fighter, but I'd rather take a clean punch from him than from Kai Kara-France. I do favor Erceg in this one. I feel bad because Kara-France may just end up being one of the best guys of his generation in his weight class, never to win a major title, but he just keeps running into the wrong people at the wrong time. And 28-year-old Steve Erceg coming off his first loss in the UFC, but a loss that taught him that he belongs with the top guys in the division, I think is another wrong guy, wrong time for Kai Kara-France. Give me Erceg to maybe go through some danger in the feet. I wouldn't be surprised if Kara-France catches him clean a couple times, bloodies his face up for him some, but give me Erceg not to get cleanly knocked down or hurt badly, and find clever ways to get this fight to the ground on his terms. Threaten Kara-France, bust him up with ground and pound. I could see him getting a finish later on in the fight, especially if Kara-France is slowing down at all. He's an old 31, like tons of experience. In fact, that's going to be my pick. Give me Erceg by third round TKO. I'm going to say he gets it on the ground, and it's a club or sub type thing where Kara-France doesn't give up his back and just gets pounded out.
Yeah. So I want to make something really clear before I break down this fight. So when we started the show, I said that this card was missing like a co-main event, and it was more of how the UFC structures pay-per-views. It was not me dissing this co-main event, because that I love this matchup. Like these guys, I mean, any top flyweights, it's always fun. I mean, it's such, flyweight doesn't have the depth that other divisions, bantamweight to welterweight does, but talent, it lacks for nobody. I mean, it is the most talented, when you take the top, 8, 9, 10 fighters, it's those guys as good as anybody. So, and it's always, I mean, there's no such thing as a boring flyweight fight. And especially not these two guys. You mentioned Kai Kara-France, like, all his losses have been to studs. Like, if he loses to Steve Erceg, that's another stud. Like, it won't be a bad loss.
It's another top 3 guy that he's just running into at the wrong time.
I mean, Erceg is really good. I mean, there's an argument that he could be the UFC flyweight champion, that this could have been his first title fight. I mean, I scored the fight for Pantoja, but many people believe he beat Pantoja. I mean, there's 3 rounds that were toss-ups. They could have all went to Erceg. I think I had it 48-47. If I scored 1 round Erceg, different. I think the judges were kind of close. So he's a big flyweight. He's well-rounded, really sharp boxing, very crisp in his striking, good hand speed, nice up jab. He likes to get in the pocket and he throw down some power shots. He's got nice power. I mean, how about that step in elbow he hit Pantoja with? I mean, he's so like he might look like a cross country guy, but he's a cross country guy that got some attitude. Like he's got a mean streak in him. Can I tell you real quick, really quick? This is a true story. When I was a senior in high school, I ran cross country just to stay in shape for wrestling. The wrestling was my real sport, and my first. So long story short, I kind of joined a little later, so I didn't run in the very first race, and they put me in a spot, and I'm out in the woods just waiting there, and the guy tells me this way. I swear he told me there was like a split. I swear he told me one way, and like the first pack of the guys just start coming around, and I'm like, waiting, and I'm waiting out there like an hour before they finally before they start the race and this is before cell phones. I couldn't be freaking, on Twitter and shit. Like I'm like playing with a stick on the ground. Like that's what I'm doing for an hour. And this freaking cross country guys start coming, the real skinny, fast ones. And I just point like the direction it's supposed to go. It was a dead end. I swear to God, they went like another like 30 yards, and it was a dead end. They had to come back around, like, what the fuck, dude? And had to go the other direction. And then afterwards, I remember I was such an asshole. Afterwards, I was like top wrestler in the state then. Afterwards, like, someone's, what happened? I said, dude, I don't know. You told me to tell him to go that way. He's like, no, I told you to go that way. And I go, like, I don't know. But then, like, some other guy of the other team was like mouthing off on it. Like, didn't get his best time or some shit. I don't know. And I'm like, dude, tell the fastest runner fuck off. I'm the best wrestler. Like, if he wants to make something of it, let's go see. Let's see how that works out for you. I remember. This is such an asshole. I was 18. Give me a break. I said 17. I remember saying like, "Dude, he meets me in the parking lot. He'll never fucking run again." I remember saying that. Anyways, Uh, so that guy was actually Steve Urseg, by the way. Where were we? So his defense, he needs to improve. He stands a little tall. He lacks head movement, which makes him very hittable. Very hittable for top guys in the division. That's what I mean. Like, not overall. He's got good kick, though. He'll sometimes throw naked kicks. He's a good wrestler. I mean, like, he took down David Dvorak 3 times in that fight. He's a very underrated grappler, really good BJJ practitioner. He's got 6 submission wins. Just look at the way he grappled with Pantoja. That tells you how good of a grappler he is, because most people get to the positions that with Pantoja that he did, and they get submitted. Top guys, too. Kai Kara-France, I mean, he's a really well-rounded fighter, a very intelligent fighter. He's a boxer with a high guard defense, tight boxing. He likes to pressure his opponents with a nice jab. I like that he doubles and triples it up. He was doing that to Albazi a lot. Follows up with tight crosses. He's an accurate striker. He's good at getting all the way in and getting out before he gets hit. The kind of, a stick and move kind of guy. Good head movement, constantly moving his head off the center line. He has this like slip and rip style where he keeps himself, he just slips out of range, keeps himself, in position to land a counter. He's one of the biggest hitters in the division. I mean, he knocked out Hajira Bontarine. He knocked out Cody Garbrandt. I love the Garbrandt fight where he didn't rush to finish Garbrandt. He just started, like, he saw everything that was coming and just countered, picking his shots perfectly, which showed his intelligence. He loves that, like, dipping Robert Whitaker one side, throwing the high kick on the other side move. He'll throw some of the best calf kicks in the division. No, he wants to be the one moving forward, and he doesn't like being pressured. Like, I go back to the Brandon Moreno fight, the second Brandon Moreno fight. Moreno had a lot of success, but just pressuring him. Moreno also hurt him to the body in that fight. Not much of a wrestler. He did show against Askarov that he can defend enough, defend takedowns enough to make his opponents tired. He also showed even better takedown defense against Amir Albazi. One thing he will do, he'll look for like switches and spladles and stuff like that, kind of funk style, to keep a scramble going. If he is taken down, he'll pop right back up. He's hard to hold down. Though he was recently submitted by Brandon Royval, which, I mean, not recently, but Brandon Royval is, he's that guy. So I love this fight. I think Urseg's a bad stylistic matchup for Kara-France. He's bigger. I think I like Kara-France's counter striking power, but I actually think Urseg might even crisper, more technical boxer. I think both guys will have their moments. I just think Urseg might be faster, and I think he might hit harder, which is great. I shouldn't say hit harder. I definitely don't want to get hit by Kai Kara-France, but I think he lands cleaner, which give him the advantage. And then, I think he's a better overall grappler. I think he catches Kara-France's chin. I mean, the one thing about Kara-France is, like, he can get tagged up. I'm going to say Urseg gets a stoppage. I think he's going to get TKO. Give me Urseg by 3rd round TKO.
With that, we come to the main event of UFC 305, a middleweight title fight between your reigning champ, Dricus du Plessis, and multiple-time former champ, Israel Adesanya, who will look to claim back what was once his. Du Plessis, the 30-year-old South African, is 21-2 overall. He is 7-0 since joining the UFC as a standout in KSW as well as EFC. He won the title back in January at UFC 297 with a split decision over then champ Sean Strickland. Prior to that, he had back-to-back knockouts of Robert Whitaker and Derek Brunson. Du Plessis will look to make his first title defense here against Adesanya. 35-year-old Nigerian-born, now New Zealand native, is 24-3 overall. He's 13-3 in the UFC. He lost his last time out. It was just under a year ago. It was UFC 293, where he lost the title to Strickland in a 5-round decision that saw him kind of hesitant and definitely taken out of his game in a way we haven't really seen anybody else do. He is stepping into the cage for the first time since then. He assures us he has, quote, definitely evolved since that defeat. We'll get to see. And actually, I'll quiz you, Keith. Your favorite is -130. Your underdog, even money, +100. Who do you think they are?
I'm glad that this fight is picking, because it should be. I'll say Adesanya's favorite.
You are correct. Israel Adesanya. The slightest of favorites, again, Duplessis just barely in the plus money at plus 100. Keith, it's tempting to say there's a rock, paper, scissors thing going on here where Strickland beat Adesanya, Duplessis beat Strickland. Tell me who you think gets it done here. We have people at the top of this division that have all been pretty competitive with each other and have really, really different games from each other.
Yeah. So let's say this real quick. It's funny because usually when we do this preview show, if you've never watched this, your first time watching, we go into like a big, we start off the show with a big discussion about the main event and not breaking down the styles. We didn't really do that for this one, and I want to make it just. Me and Ben, we don't plan when we talk. Like, I mean, there's definitely more planning in the, notes wise when doing the preview show than we do the recap show. But the point is, like, we just kind of wing it. So that's why that happened. It is not because of lack of excitement for this main event.
No,
because I like all the build up. Like, I get excited for that. The spectacle and all that. I mean, there's some nasty things with this one that probably is unnecessary, but it doesn't take away with how brilliant stylistically this matchup is. Like, it is one of the most brilliant ones, and there's so many questions heading into this fight. Does Adesanya have stuff left? Is Duplessis, the real deal? Can Adesanya win the title for the third time? I mean, how many guys have won a UFC title in the same division 3 times? I mean, I know Randy Couture did. Is everybody else? Is that it?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, there might be someone we're not thinking of, but I think it's just him. Well, wait a minute, did Moreno flyweight? Did he win it 3 times? Because he beat Figueiredo with the draw, then he won the title, lost it, won it back. No, he only won it twice, right?
Yep, just twice.
Yeah, only won it twice. Yeah, so he'd be, I think, other than Couture, he'd be the only 3-time champion. So there's some backstory though. I think the UFC dropped the ball, and I know it's easy for me to say you need to go to Africa. I understand that, but this fight should have been in Africa. Would it have added even more attention? Probably. Some racial lines that they might not want to touch, but still, sometimes just whatever, just do it anyways. Not saying press like a racial element, but I mean just just do an effort. That should have happened. Again, like I said, I know it's easy for me to say the logistics are much different, but still. All right, let's go. Let's break down these guys' fights because it's really intriguing. I'll say this about Drake Duplessis. I've been counting this guy out. I don't know if I've ever picked him to win so far in the UFC. Like, I'm trying to remember if I picked him over. I think I picked him over Strickland, but I might not have. I might have picked Strickland. I'm not sure. But there's other guys. Like, I picked Whitaker to smash him. I picked everybody to beat him. Yeah, I'm sure there's like early fights in the UFC career, but you get my point. I keep counting this guy out, and he just keeps winning. And my only solution is, did I have a bad read on him? Yeah, obviously. But also, this dude's freaking good. He's an overachieving guy that actually just won the title. I mean, we're in a situation where there's in the UFC right now, we got a couple guys like this who are holding belts that are guys that just keep overachieving. I mean, Bilal Muhammad's what I'm thinking of. Now, obviously, Jenkins Duplessis is another one.
And Duplessis took it from Strickland, who you could say the same about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. The one thing I'll say about Strickland, I felt like Strickland had one good night. While he obviously overachieved, but I think he had one good night. Duplessis is a guy that based on his style, his intelligence, he puts himself to always have good nights. He puts himself in the best chance to win. I mean, he's a very smart fighter. He reminds me of Bilal Muhammad. Not necessarily exactly their style, but my point is you fight Bilal Muhammad, it's going to be hell. It's going to be hell against Jacob Duplessis because of his style. Like, he's got these deceivingly long arms where he lands while his opponents think they're out of range. He constantly fighting out of different stances to get his opponents guessing. He's going to be on the gas the entire fight. He's a pressure counter striker who has good output. He attacks with combination. He has deceiving power. Like he's not this big, Alex Pereira when he was champion, touch your chin and it's over. But he's got 4 TKOs in the UFC. He can load up a little bit. He'll occasionally toss out spinning attacks, but he's a guy when he throws out a spinning attack, I usually say I hate it. He's a guy I don't hate it because it's not just a wild spinning attack to land a spinning back fist and waste energy that's not going to work. No, he'll literally a spinning attack to get his opponents just to back away from him, and then he's like, as he's finishing the spin, he's like he's right on the hips, like he used it to create the space that he wanted, which I like. He's got good calf kicks. Now the big knock on him, and this is why I was against him, is his defensive holes. He backs straight up when he's pressured. He pillars. He hates being pressured. He's been hurt in many fights, though he always finds a way to recover. And he's a very good MMA wrestler. And what I mean by that is he isn't a technical wrestler. Like he doesn't have the pedigree. He doesn't run the pipe really well. He doesn't, doesn't misdirections, doesn't have peak outs and all the stuff. He's just relentless. I mean, the dude's got 16 takedowns in 7 UFC fights. He took Sean Strickland down 6 times. He just uses his pressure to get them to back up to the fence, and then he shoots. And then like, what's more impressive is he's taking down quality wrestlers. Like Rob Whittaker's a strong wrestler. I mean, Derek Brunson, to all his flaws, Derek Brunson can wrestle. He took him down. And then when he gets the fight on the ground, he is fantastic. I mean, he's got some of the meanest ground and pound in the entire UFC. He's a submission threat. He's got 10 subs on his record. And despite, like, one thing I brought up, despite this, like, weird breathing technique thing that he does, he, like, really exaggerates his breath, he's shown that he can go hard all 25 minutes of the fight. And that's what got him the win against Sean Strickland. When Strickland was cruising at times, he wasn't. So, like, not only will he beat you with, put him in his best position, but he'll also just beat you by having the better optics. Now, move over to Israel Adesanya. Izzy's such a good striker. I mean, I've said this before. Like, when you put in the greatest strikers in MMA history, I'm not going to debate is Izzy and Crow Cop and Anderson Silva and fill in Alex Pereira. Yeah, I'm not going to debate who's best, but he's in the conversation. Like, you can't. The conversation's invalid if you don't put Israel Adesanya in the conversation. Now, everything I'm going to say about him is assuming that everything he did against Strickland isn't true about him. That it was just one disastrous performance, one disastrous night. Because, I mean, he did look like the regular dude that we got used to seeing. Like, he looked like a guy that, bought an Israel Adesanya suit and threw it on. Yeah, he looked like a completely different person. Mm-hmm. Now, good Israel Adesanya, he's a long and lengthy guy, poised striker. Hold on, let me back up before someone says, "Hey, stupid." Even bad Israel Adesanya is long and lengthy. I understand his arms didn't change, so I mean, I'm just pointing out the good things about him. Yeah. He can flow back and forth flawlessly. Great footwork, and he constantly uses it. Like he's good at winning the foot battle to set up his shot straight down the pipe. I've said this before. He reminds me of like John Jones or Perion or even Anderson Silva, the way he's a slow starter, but it's just because he's setting up things. He's trapping you. He's feinting with his hips to see how you got to react. He's throwing little feelers. He's not even trying to hit you. He's kind of like trying to get the space, see which way you got to turn, different things. So he's a student in there. He's really good at changing his tempo to striking. Like he'll throw something fast and he'll throw something a little slower to see, you get used to, that's how the hook comes in. That's how the hook comes in. Then all of a sudden it comes much faster. Great at hand fighting and moving his opponents to the spots where he wants them to go. He understands distance well and finds distance by just grabbing the hands and using his length that way. He sets up traps and feints. He freezes opponents with his feints. I was going to like the Robert Whittaker, the first Robert Whittaker, he was doing that. Quick hands. I mean, dude's an absolute sniper with his accuracy. I mean, check out the way he was landing on Derek Brunson every time he was charging in. The way he was like walking Robert Whittaker and Paulo Costa, the first Robert Whittaker fight and Paulo Costa right into shots. Even the first MMA fight against Alex Pereira, I mean, he was landing pretty, pretty easily against such a decorated striker. He's very defensive minded, good head movement. Besides the Sean Strickland fight, I think one thing could happen. I think he might have underestimated Strickland striking. I mean, he got caught and never really recovered, which he might have been on. You know what it reminded me of? When Randy Couture beat Tim Sylvia and Randy Couture caught Tim Sylvia like, I don't know,
seconds into the fight, clocked him with an overhand. Yeah.
And then like Tim Sylvia had like no answer the rest of the fight. And I was like, did Tim Sylvia just suddenly stop know how to fight at all? Like, or was he really hurt and he just couldn't recover? That might have been a little bit what's happened is he could be wrong, but it just seems like he rolls with punches well. So even when you land on him, it doesn't really land clean. I mean, even go to like the Alex Pereira, the first Alex Pereira fight where Alex came back in the 5th round. Say what you want about him, like he never went down. Like he obviously Alex Pereira caught him, but all those other shots, they weren't landing as clean as people pretend they were, and that was the knock on Mark Garda for jumping in. He mixes punches and kicks together well. He's got a big kicking game, such dexterity in his hips. He can throw up kicks super easily. He throws question mark kicks with like no effort at all. Obviously, he hits hard. And I've said it before. I mean, look at his body. It's not that he's this big muscle guy who can crack it, just because he hits so clean. I mean, think about all the guys that have faced Alex Pereira. This is the guy who's much smaller than him that knocked Alex Pereira out. And it wouldn't surprise me if Alex Pereira goes on to become the first 3-weight champion in UFC history. And this guy who one punch knocked him out. So he's got a good Muay Thai clinch game. He likes foot sweeps in there. I'll say this: he's an underrated grappler. He's not good. I want to be very clear, but he's not nearly as bad as people think he is. He does need to improve his takedown defense, but he isn't a fish out of water that many people believe he is. No, again, I definitely favor Duplessis there, especially based on he's grappling from. But my point is it's not like, oh yeah, Duplessis just taped down, it's over. I really think I've been thinking about this fight, and I've flip flopped, and I'm glad that the odds are super close. Like I would have been like going crazy either way. I'd have been like going on a big rant right now if it was disrespectful if either guy was a big favorite. I would have been saying, "Oh my god, how can they forget how good Israel Oceania is?" Or the opposite. Like, I mean, when does Duplessis ever get credit? So that's why I was curious what the line was. I think there's 3 possibilities for this fight, and I'm gonna go. And I know I've been very long winded, but I've been saving it for the main event. The first possibility is Adesanya has lost a step. And I know that seems crazy because, I mean, he's 1 fight removed from possibly being the pound best fighter in the world, or at least, top 2 or 3 best fighters in the world. And beating the biggest, coming off the biggest win of his career by knocking out and avenging the loss to Alex Pereira. But think about it for a second. Go back to his last 3 fights. I mean, he just lost 5 rounds to Sean Strickland. All right. Take away that 1 punch landed where he face planted Alex Pereira, or I think it was 2 punches. I think it was it was a left hook and then a straight right, or maybe it was the other way around. He lost. It was the second round. He lost the first round to Strickland, to Pereira, and was losing the second. Yep. So that you add those to the 5 that Strickland beat him, that's 7 rounds in a row. But hold on, the fight before that was Alex Pereira, the 5th one. I mean, where he lost in the 5th round. Well, he lost that round too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's 1 perfect 1 punch, 2 punch combination away from losing 8 straight rounds. So, as crazy as it sounds like to say, oh my God, he's slipping, he lost it, he might be, I'm not going to say he's shot by any means, but I mean that he's definitely declining based on his age and losing 8 straight rounds. It's not. So what I'm saying is, there's a possibility that he's done, as being the top guy in the division, and Duplessis just dominates him everywhere. He hangs with him on the feet, he beats him up on the ground, he outpaces him, and it's a shellacking. That's a very good possibility. The second possibility is that Adesanya isn't done, and he isn't done, but Duplessis just is a bad stylistic matchup for him. He's still one of the top guys. He's still up there. He could still beat any guy on any night, but not Duplessis, but Duplessis is the best stylistic matchup. I could see Duplessis pressing the action, forcing Adesanya on his back foot, doing enough in the striking just to keep Adesanya busy, to distract him. And then he's closing distance. He's getting takedowns. He's unleashing some of the meanest ground and pound. The damage, the output is just too much for Adesanya. And then the third option is Adesanya just smashes him. Adesanya just reminds everybody who he is, and he styles on like he did Brunson and Whitaker. And as Duplessis is trying to move forward, trying to like press the action, he's getting in that range where he's just walking into things, and Adesanya is just teeing off on him as he's coming in, similar to the Brunson fight.
The first Whitaker fight. Yeah.
The first Whitaker, the Paulo Costa fight, where you come in, like you're sitting outside and you're going to get picked around with like, he'll throw those like little like oblique kicks to the legs, and he'll throw like a question mark kick that doesn't really land, but does enough like hit you on the shoulder and, gets the crowd excited and just kind of lulls you, jabs you. And then finally you're like, fuck, I got to get inside. And you come inside and that's what he wanted. It's like he's lacing you as you're coming in. So those are the three options that I really think could be. Now, two of those three options really favors Duplessis, obviously. I flip-flopped on this. I'm still taking option 3. I'm still taking Adesanya. I'm still thinking he's that guy. I think Duplessis does his thing. I think he eats shots. I think he has moments. I think he shows that he is so insanely tough and finds ways, and he has moments, and he makes the early parts of the fight tough. Yeah, he lands some shots. He might even get some takedowns. But I think when Adesanya gets his feet, I think he exposes the lack of defense, the lack of technique of Duplessis. Duplessis gets away with being super tough against certain guys, but his lack of technique, like Sean Strickland's not gonna. Yeah, he's gonna jab you. He's not gonna hurt you with big shots for your lack of technique. Adesanya, if he's still that guy, this is the guy. He'll put your lights out. I say he does. In the second round. Give me Adesanya by second round TKO.
I love the breakdown there, and
I'm sorry. That was a long one. I went like 20 minutes on that one. I'm sorry. Hey, I just love this
12 fight pay-per-view card. We're clocking in pretty short here. Like, by all means, share the goods with us. And like you, I've been going back and forth on this one because, all of us, unless you are a personal friend of Dricus du Plessis or you're a KSW diehard who watched both Roberto Soldic fights or something, Dricus du Plessis has surprised you. Like, he was just another dude when he joined the UFC. I thought he was one of the better prospects to come out of Africa in a while just because he was young. I mean, he was on a pretty impressive run, broken up just by the 2-fight series with Soldic. But I didn't expect him to turn into a title contender. And I think I've picked against him about half the times he's fought in the UFC. I know I picked him to lose to Trevin Giles. I know I picked him to lose to Whitaker and Strickland. So, I mean, that's almost half of his UFC fights right there. And I've had to come around on a couple of things. Ahead of the Whitaker fight, where he's already 5-0 in the UFC, and he's already blasting fringe, like the people we think of as gatekeepers, Brad Tavares, Derek Brunson, like plastering those guys. I was like, okay, I know that Duplessis is good because he's now won 5 straight in the UFC, but what is he actually good at? And here's the thing. Sometimes when you say a fighter is well-rounded, you mean they're a 5 out of 10 everywhere. Sometimes when you say a fighter is well-rounded, you mean they're a 7 or 8 out of 10 everywhere.
Yeah.
Duplessis is closer to the latter of those, but what really makes him special is that, like you said, he's incredibly intelligent and well-coached. Being a 7 out of 10 everywhere is enough if you're the kind of fighter who can match up your 7 against where your opponent has a less than 7.
Yeah, that's good.
You compared him to Bilal Muhammad. In the case of Muhammad, against most UFC welterweights, it just means he's going to wrestle the shit out of you. But I guarantee you, if you were a UFC welterweight and his tape study indicated that his best route to victory was to keep things on the feet and throw 1-2s with a leg kick at you, that is exactly what he would do until you proved him wrong.
Yeah, that's right. You know what he's good at? Sorry to interrupt you. I know I talk forever. You know what he's good at? He's good at fighting.
Yes, that's
it. He's just good at fighting.
Yeah, he's good at fighting. The one thing I would say he's elite at, he has incredible recoverability. Like I would have said,
yeah.
In fact, my notes were like, this guy is impossible to hurt, but you put the right point on it. He's been hurt, but 5 seconds later, you would never know. His recoverability is incredible. Yeah. And
it's the worst thing you do. Like Darren Till had him hurt.
Yeah. And Till is a good boxer, but not a huge hitter.
Yeah.
It's incredible recoverability. And at least through age 30, that has been enough to paper over a number of defensive deficiencies. You pointed out he's if he has a weakness, it's probably striking defense. Thus far, it hasn't cost him at the UFC level. You can argue that it's just a matter of time. Like Trevin Giles won the first round against him, but Giles made Duplessis pay in small amounts for defensive lapses. Duplessis caught Giles, made him pay for one defensive lapse by ending the fight. Robert Whittaker was winning the first round until Duplessis took him down. Like, that's impressive because the number of people who can both strike with Robert Whittaker and have the option to take him down when they want is very, very short. That is an elite thing. Like, not even Israel Adesanya can say that. There's every possibility that you're right. If Adesanya, even at 35, is the guy that we think he is, I don't think Duplessis gets away with his defensive lapses. Adesanya has a way of making those people look silly and then leaving him face down. He could absolutely just have Duplessis running headlong into kicks as Adesanya slips out the side, just clean sniping on a fighter that can't close the distance safely. That is definitely in Adesanya's tool belt. Adesanya, he turned 35 a couple weeks ago. He's had a pretty long MMA career at this point. He had a kickboxing career before that was dozens of fights. And as you pointed out, yeah, he has great reach, but his striking game has always run on speed and, more importantly, timing. Once that slips a little bit, it's kind of like Anderson Silva. The margin of error may not be much once that top gear slips. Once people started to catch Anderson Silva, it got ugly pretty quick. Between that and the fact that, man, Duplessis, despite not having the big name camp, not being at City Kickboxing, which has become so prominent over the last 6 or 7 years, I keep on bringing up City Kickboxing and Eugene Behrman as like, if you give me 3 months to plan for fighter X and find me a way to beat him, give me Alex Volkanovski's corner, which is primarily City Kickboxing plus Joe Lopez. Even feeling that way, I trust Duplessis at least as much to make smart decisions within rounds and smart adjustments between rounds. He's just been so smart and so well coached and has given away so little in 7 UFC fights so far. Add to that the fact that even though his wrestling game isn't pretty, I think he's going to have some success getting Adesanya down, or at least forcing Adesanya to compromise in ways that might open Duplessis to catching him with just a punch right to the head. I'm leaning slightly towards our underdog here. I'm glad that this fight was equally difficult for both of us to pick. But if Duplessis beats Adesanya, I don't think it's going to be like the Strickland fight. I think Duplessis is going to be able to bust it wide open. He'll either catch Adesanya with something huge on the feet and show that, maybe Adesanya's chin and recoverability are a little compromised as well, or takes him down and literally busts him wide open. starts hammering him with ground and pound before Adesanya can use his underrated get-up game to get back up. So I'm going the other way here. I'm going with what, at least as of the time of recording, is the slight upset. Give me Duplessis and Still. And like I say, I think this could be close and tense until it's not. Give me Duplessis to break this thing wide open in the third round, get a TKO on the ground.
Dude, I'm so pumped for this card now.
Me too. And that's it. That is the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 305, Duplessis versus Adesanya. Maybe we should call it Duplessis versus Adesanya 1, if Keith is right about that main event. It goes down this Saturday, August 17th at RAC Arena in Perth, Western Australia. You can get it on ESPN Plus pay-per-view here in the United States. Outside of the United States, I'm not sure. I don't really care. I with Keith that way. If you live outside the U.S., we have enough struggles trying to get these fights on our TVs.
Figure out yourself.
See to your own problems. Anyway, thank you for listening. If this is your first time watching, please do drop us a like, subscribe. Neither of those cost you a thing, and they make our bosses very happy. Drop us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We'd love to hear your take on these fights. If you think we left any upset value on the table, let us know. We'll definitely give you your props if you're right. But most importantly, join us on the recap. We will be live on the Sherdog YouTube page right after this main event. Keith will take the captain's chair. We'll talk about all 12 of these fights, talk about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. Talking about what's next for some of the notable winners as well as losers, and talking with you. The live chat is open that whole time, so we're taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends that hang out with us after the fights, and we'd love you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy these fights.
To the sea. Make your bed of fairy tales while you're hunting for your whale. So cold and blind. Don't